Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is indeed my show. I'm glad that you guys can join me. We are here. What is today? Wednesday. We are anticipating the meeting between Trump and Xi Jinping that is going to take place tomorrow. What is it? Busan, South Korea. I guess it's supposed to happen. It's supposed to go down. But there's other news that's taken place in lieu of that news. Apparently, a plot to kidnap Maduro has been unveiled. Apparently, the United States tried to pay the pilot of Maduro. I don't know how this was unveiled. I would imagine the pilot probably told, but for all intents and purposes, the objective was to fly him to a location where they can abduct him further and effectively try to arrest him. The Colombian president, Gustavo Petro, said something similar about this with the pressure that's being applied to him also. So South America is clearly, or Latin America is in the crosshairs, to put it mildly. There's questions about the conversation that's supposed to take place between Trump and Xi Jinping. Now, I am fascinated by some of the reporting on this, because some of the reporting on this is pretty wild to me. And I don't know why they're reporting this. For example, Wall Street Journal came out, and this is, let's see, this is Economic Times. Wall Street Journal is behind a paywall. I don't have Wall Street Journal, so there's that. But Economic Times is reporting the exact same story. They are reporting that Trump is supposed to talk with Xi Jinping about lowering tariffs below like 20% less than intended for fentanyl. And it's like, really? It's really about fentanyl. That's what we're supposed to believe. And yet that is indeed what they are reporting. It's fascinating. But my guest is here, so I'm going to go to my guest. I don't want to keep him waiting. We are joined with the man himself, Jerry Gray. How you doing, Jerry? You doing okay
I'm good.
Tonight for us, I suppose?
Let me just give you a bit of extra light. There you go.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Oh, much better, much better. Yeah, man, I'm glad that you could join me. And just for the audience who know, Jerry Gray, he is host of Jerry's Take on China. He's lived in China for more than 20 years and has traveled more than 30,000 kilometers on bike across the country. I love adding that part in because that part is just fascinating.
40,000.
Oh, yeah, 40. I'm sorry, 40,000.
It is more than 30. You're right.
Yeah, that is impressive. I put it in because it gets across that you have seen that country in a way that most Americans haven't even seen America. Like, it's one thing to, drive somewhere by car, you see it kind of out your window. It's another thing where you're pedaling as you're going by.
Yeah, I think America and China are about the same size. And if you think about riding across America, let's say you want to ride from New York to Los Angeles or San Francisco, you're talking about a ride that will take you a minimum of 2 months. And that's the kind of thing that I've done 4 times now in different directions. I've done the north-south, I've done the east-west, I've done the west-east, and I've done another south-north, which is through the middle as opposed to the east coast. So yeah, there's a lot of miles there under the bike, under the tires. Yeah.
I wish I had your level of health to pull something like that off. That is.
Well, sometimes so do I.
Yeah. Oh, fair enough. So Donald Trump, he is in Asia.
Yes.
He is supposed to be going to South Korea, Busan specifically, and he is going to have a conversation with Xi Jinping on the sidelines. That is the anticipated meeting.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that, the very interesting thing about that is it hasn't been confirmed here that this conversation will go ahead. But yes, I believe it will.
Really?
But there's been no Chinese confirmation. So if it doesn't happen, it's not because China said, we don't want to do it. It's simply a case of, if it doesn't happen, it hasn't been arranged properly. The Chinese people met with him in Kuala Lumpur. Chinese people are meeting in Brussels in the next few days as well. There's a lot of trade talks going on. And you could actually say, well, everything that's going on, and China is being very strict about this. They're saying, and this is what they're saying in their media and their government releases, we are complying with what the two leaders discussed when they had their multiple phone conversations. So they are not, China is not trying to say, screw you, America. China is saying, well, America, you told us this is what you want to do, and we're doing it, and we're doing everything we said we would do. Now, we can go into what Americans think China is not doing and how Americans are being led to believe that China is threatening, but that's a different story. China is telling the world, and most of the world seems to be listening, that they are doing what they said they would do. And Trump cannot deny that if he goes to sit down. Now, if he says to China, you're being untruthful, China is just going to say, oh, well, there's no point in meeting you. So if it does fall over, it's because something like that. But at the moment, there has been no confirmation that I've seen from the Chinese side that this meeting will go ahead, but I expect that it will. I have to say, I expect that it will go ahead. It will go ahead in Korea, and it's on the sidelines of the APEC conference, which is good. I think it's a good thing that they're talking. So ultimately, we all agree that they should be talking. Now, you have questions about what you think might happen. Let's go for them. You're muted. You're muted. I can't hear you. You still have the mute sign. I don't know if you can hear me. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, so you still have the mute sign, says you're muted. So something.
There we are.
Yeah, back.
We're
back.
This mic has a finicky wire. In the moment that you move the mic, sometimes the mic goes out. I'm sorry. What's wild here, not only are they reporting that the meeting is going to take place, Trump administration has been putting out, we're close to a deal. We're going to get a deal. We believe that we can make agreements. And what's wild, it's even weirder than that, because what they're reporting here is that the Wall Street Journal came out with an article saying that Donald Trump has discussed fentanyl for tariff cuts. Basically saying he's going to offer tariff cuts if China cuts the amount of fentanyl coming into the United States. Now I find that to be laughable, that that's going to be the thing that they're actually talking about in earnest. It sounds like the fentanyl is being a stalking horse for, hey, we don't want to bring up the fact that China has rare earth mineral dominance over us. And we don't want to bring that up. That's what it sounds like.
China has mineral dominance, but we'll come back to that in a moment. Fentanyl. A few weeks ago, fentanyl was coming from China through Mexico into Canada, and both Mexico and Canada were tariffed because of fentanyl from China coming through them. Today, or yesterday and the day before, fentanyl is now coming from Venezuela and Colombia from China into America. Fentanyl is coming into America. Why can't America stop fentanyl coming in? China doesn't have a fentanyl problem. It has borders which are equally as big, but it doesn't have a fentanyl problem. Now, China has more land borders than America has. America only has 2. So suddenly we've got this situation that fentanyl is the issue. Now, if we are to say that fentanyl is the issue, okay, let's hypothetically for a moment accept that China is producing fentanyl and it's illegally finding its way into America. What do they want China to do? Because 10 years ago or 8 years ago, China blocked all fentanyl going out of China without controlled restrictions. In the same way that all drugs in America are controlled, you have to get a prescription to get them, everything else is illegal. In the same way as the UK, Australia, and many other countries, drugs are illegal to buy. What China did was it didn't just say, we'll make these drugs illegal, we'll make all the precursors that you nominate illegal too. So every single drug that leaves China legally is going through a restricted process. Now, there's another little bridge here to something else that we're going to discuss, and that is rare earth elements are exactly the same thing. China has done the same for rare earth elements as it did for fentanyl years ago. It said, we're not going to allow this to go out where it can be used illegally, where we can't control where it goes to. So if it is leaving the country, it's leaving the country illegally, and China is doing a lot to stop it. It's actually executing drug dealers all the time. There's another one, an Australian, going through a drug deal at the moment. He's going through an appeal, I should say, not a drug deal. Sorry. He's going through an appeal at the moment because he has been sentenced to death in China for exporting or trying to export 7.5 kilos of amphetamines. Now, wow. I don't know the difference between amphetamine and fentanyl, but the fact is, drug dealers in China, anyone illegally using drugs, is going to get into a lot of trouble in China, probably to the point that, poof, they get the bullet in the back of their head on a Tuesday morning at 11 a.m. That's going to happen to this guy almost certainly. Now, it might change. I don't agree with the death penalty, but it might change, and he might get a suspended death penalty. He might get his 2 years in prison and then deported. I don't know what's going to happen to him. But the fact is, at the moment, he's going through an appeal. China has done everything it can already to stop the legal and illegal removal of fentanyl and all its precursors from China into any other country in the world. China has more controls over fentanyl than any other country in the world. And it has that because it's worked and continues to work with the Drug Enforcement Agency. Now, that's something that Americans seem to forget, that there is a Drug Enforcement Agency office in Shanghai. There is one in Guangzhou. These are two of the major cities that export from China. Both have DEA offices. They were closed down temporarily after Nancy Pelosi made her ill-fated visit to Taiwan, and they were closed down as part of the ramifications of that, but they do exist still. So I don't think that, I mean, basically this is just political talk. America will come, Trump will raise this. They're saying you're going to raise Jimmy Lai. Jimmy Lai is a Hong Kong publisher, billionaire, who was spending NED money to create the protests and the riots and the bombings and the murders inside of Hong Kong. And he's in prison at the moment. So Jimmy Lai is going to be raised because they don't want this guy to languish in a prison for the rest of his life, which he's almost certain to do. So Jimmy Lai for Hong Kong, fentanyl is another one, rare earth elements are another one. And America literally has not a single card to play. Now, Trump says, we've got all the cards. And the joke is, Xi Jinping says, where were your cards made? They were made in China. That is the truth of it. All of Trump's cards are made in China. He's not going to get away with this. He's not going to come here and make demands. And the fact is, America's trade with China has reduced considerably. And they're saying China's collapsing as a result of it. I've just made a recent video, which will go out probably in about 40 minutes' time. I made a long video to show that that China is not in any danger of collapsing whatsoever. It's completely the opposite. If China's trade is up, China's profitability is up, China's purchasing managers index in production and services are up, China's commerce, e-commerce, retail commerce, they're all up. China's savings are up. China's income is up. China's life expectancy is up. Everything, every measurable metric that you can think of for China is up. We are not a country, and I say we because I'm in China, we're not a country that's on the verge of collapse in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. It's completely the opposite. It's a country that has challenges, but most of those challenges are being created by America. Now, America has far more challenges, far more challenges. Every time I open my X, I see Americans telling Scott Bessent that he's a lying POS because he says fuel is down, food is down, inflation is down, rates are down, everything is down. And 400 commentators under him saying, you're fucking lying to me. It's not down at all. And it's not. And that's the sort of comments that you're getting. So why are Americans so angry with America? And why are Americans now starting to say we actually need a relationship with China? And they are. More Americans are starting to say, you know, they've got it better over there. They're starting to see this because thousands of people are coming on TikTok, on Douyin, on Red Note, on YouTube, and they're showing China. And you can't fake this. You know, you can fake one city, you can fake one region, you can fake one part of a city, but you can't fake what I've seen. You can't fake the fact that you're riding through China and then the high-speed rail goes past you and another high-speed rail goes another way, and then a slow-speed rail goes with 5,000 tons of coal to the power station. You can't fake this stuff. China is real, and the stories you're being told from inside of China are equally as real. And everybody who's responding to the comments in America is saying, you're lying to us. So why are you trusting the same people who you know in America are lying to you when you're not trusting them about China? So more and more people are starting to say, well, hang on, this can't be right. What I'm being told about China can't be right. It's not.
Yeah. We don't have high-speed rail, so I don't know what that looks like in practice of having trains zip by like that. We have, we have Amtrak, and Amtrak doesn't even go all the way across the country. I mean, we are hard-pressed to get from like Richmond to Chicago. Would be a difficult haul. Like
I got on a metro train a few weeks ago in Guangzhou, and it traveled at 186 kilometers an hour. That's about 110 miles an hour. And that's a metro. That's a subway. That's your underground subway traveling at 180 kilometers an hour. We have a slow speed train that runs from Guangzhou to Zhuhai. I live between these two cities. I'm closer to Zhuhai than Guangzhou. And it takes 17 minutes to get the 93 kilometers to Guangzhou on the high speed, but that's not even a real high speed. That is limited to 250 kilometers an hour. Then there's a 350 kilometer an hour, and they have just introduced the 450 kilometer an hour, which is in operation right now. But it's not carrying passengers yet, and the reason is they won't carry passengers until they've done 1 million uneventful kilometers. And they're doing that. They're just running these trains backwards and forwards across lines to get the 1 million kilometers up until they can say, we haven't had an incident, now give us approval. It's like the FAA approval. You need a tick in the box to say that you've traveled this far. So we have a 450 kilometer line, and the 600 kilometer line is already in development and in place between Shanghai and Beijing, but it's not open for passengers yet. 600 kilometers an hour. You fly at 600 kilometers an hour.
Just wow.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. It hurts a little, but that's okay.
I'm sorry. I stabbed you in the heart with my pencil. I'm sorry.
Let me ask you this. What does Xi Jinping want out of these negotiations? I mean, Donald Trump
Xi Jinping has made it extremely clear what he wants time and time again. He wants no powerful hegemony in the world. He wants a multipolar world where every country has equal rights, equal say, and an equal position at the bargaining table. He does that all the time. He invites people from tiny little countries that most people have never heard of, Nauru, the Solomon Islands, Fiji. He invites people from Mauritius. He invites people from the Solomon Islands. He invites them in and he gives them a state reception. He meets them there with the military off the airport. He invites the leaders of the smallest countries in the world to come to China and treats them in exactly the same way as he treats the elected leaders of every other country in the world, or the leaders, the kings, queens, and etc. He gives everybody a state arrival. Even Donald Trump got it when he came to China. Richard Nixon got it years ago. Donald Trump got it. Everybody gets it. Every single leader of every single country is treated equally in China as the leader of a sovereign nation. You are our number one person today. Now, tomorrow there'll be another leader of a sovereign nation, and that's the number one today. And the next day will be another one. That's the number one today. So that's the way China does it. It wants no hegemony. It wants a multipolar world, and it does not seek leadership either in economy, in power, in military power. It doesn't seek anything except free and fair trade. That's what Xi Jinping wants. And he's said it 1,000 times. You just have to look. It even came out last week. We had what's called the 4th plenary session of the 14th 5-year term. And I've just made a video about this as well, which will be a couple of days because I haven't finished it yet. But what we've got there is the planning strategy for the next 5 years. And in it, it talks about how they diversify their markets, how they change their markets, how they don't seek power. They don't want to be the number one. They want to be one of a number of equals. There's 196 countries in the world. There are 196 leaders of those countries in the world. Every single one of them deserves the same respect as Xi Jinping because they're the leader of their country for whatever reasons, however they got there. They may be the king and born to it. They may be a queen and born to it. They may be an elected representative. They may be a military coup winner who, now remembering that China became powerful through a military coup 75 years ago. So China even respects those people. If there is enough military to fight to get you to win, then probably you have the support of the people. That's the way China views it. So they're not really interested in Donald Trump coming along and saying, we want to put America first. We want American jobs. We want American interests. This is going to be good for America. We're not going to make America great again. Xi Jinping would like to make the world great. Everyone in the world. It doesn't matter where you come from. That's what Xi Jinping wants. So that's what China wants. That's what Marxism requires. And that is what Xi Jinping is. He's a Marxist. He's a socialist. And he's building a country here in China that we should probably stop saying the word communism. We should stop saying Marxism. We should stop saying socialism, because all of those words have been tainted by 70 or 100 years of negativity to make them appear bad. They're not. They're not bad. I am a socialist. I do not have any problems saying to people, but I did for a very long time saying I'm a socialist. I didn't realize I was a socialist for many years. If you want equality for all, if you want education that's fair, if you want healthcare that's affordable, if you want your system to be people can rise above or people can be lazy and not, that's what socialism does. It gives you everything you want. It really is. People work hard and they get what they deserve. That's what socialism can give you. Socialism gives you that, whereas capitalist elitism does not. You've got 3 people who control something like 50% of America's entire money. 3 people. Yeah, you can say that's good because capitalism gave them that. And anyone can do it. Yeah, anyone can. But 350 million can't. And there's where it's wrong. That's what Xi Jinping wants. He will go into that meeting, if there is a meeting, he will go in there and he'll say, yeah, we're looking for equality. We're looking for stability. We're looking for safety. We're looking for security. You currently have thousands of weapons pointed at my country. And we provided you the means to do that. So we've stopped. That's the rare earth elements. Now, one of the things that I know you want to talk about tonight is rare earth elements. And I can promise you, no matter what is said, it is not changing. rare earth elements will not be available for military use to any country anywhere, including Russia, including Israel, including Ukraine, including Palestine, anywhere. Rare earth elements will not be available to any country anywhere until all those countries stop pointing them out and start using them for defense. And America needs to remove 800 bases from around the world and say, let's defend America, which is what this is all about. The Department of Defense should have soldiers in America protecting America's borders. No one would disagree with that. Why does the Department of Defense have 10,000 troops in Australia, 3,000 troops in Philippines, 100,000 troops in Japan, in Korea? Why? They have them there because they want to threaten, not defend. That's what it's about.
To be fair, it is called the Department of War.
Now, yes.
It's more honest now.
Yeah. They basically just said the quiet part out loud again.
Right, right. It's far more honest in the way they name it now. So you're saying that it doesn't matter what is going to take place in that meeting. That policy on rare earths is not changing.
No, if we're talking about rare earths, nothing that can be said will change China's policy on rare earths. What needs to happen is a complete removal of all military hardware, all military support that is threatening China. Now, that means the Philippines, that means Australia, that means Korea and Japan. And we know these are not going to happen. And of course, Taiwan, they have soldiers. America has soldiers 3 kilometers off the coast of China, in a province of China. Now, we could argue about the disputed ownership of that province, or not the ownership, the disputed management of that province, but we cannot argue that Taiwan and China are one country. And then why is America in Taiwan? Why are they on Kinmen Island? Kinmen Island is 3 kilometers off the coast of Xiamen. You can see it from the windows of the college where I've been. I've been into the university there, and I can see it. And from there, with a pair of binoculars or a telescope, I could probably see Americans training Taiwanese people to be aggressive towards China. How is that normal? This is not normal. They're talking about Cuba. Did you see that the United Nations ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, got called down in a point of order today because he wanted to say that Cuba is supporting terrorism. It's supporting China and Russia. And it's not. Cuba is not doing anything. Cuba's not sending mercenaries out of its borders to fight Americans. It's no threat to America. The only reason they think it's a threat is because it doesn't do what they want it to do, same as Venezuela. Venezuela's full of oil and nothing else. It's not full of fentanyl. It's not full of cocaine. It never was. It never has been. Suddenly, it's a drug-running country, and we're extrajudicially murdering people in the ocean, in international waters. And I believe that the admiral who was in charge of the fleet that was doing that has resigned as a result.
Yep.
Now, why? Why did he resign? Because he was being forced. He's a man of ethics. I think it was a man. As a man of ethics, and he was being forced to break international law and murder people who haven't had due process. If you believe those are drugs, interdict them, stop them, charge them, send them to prison, execute them, do whatever you like, whatever your law says you can do. But unless you can prove these are drugs, you don't murder them. That's against the law. And it is against the law. I don't care what any lawyer justifies it. You can change words to justify things, but you cannot change the fact that as they did in Pakistan a few years ago, as they have done in Iraq, as they've done in Libya, as they've done in Syria, they are murdering people without due process. Yes. They invade a country without UN approval. They murder people when they're there. This is a rogue nation. A rogue nation in action. And now they're trying to do the same thing. They dare not do it to China, but they're doing it inside of a province of China. They are in China. They have boots on the ground. They have invaded China's sovereign territory. And they do this with impunity. So all Xi Jinping is going to do is say, well, I'm sorry, we're not going to allow that to happen again. China is going to save the world, literally, because they were not going to give in on this. Bessent came out of a meeting in Malaysia the other day, and he said, "Oh, this is amazing. They're going to give us a 12-month reprieve." They're not. They're going to give you a 12-month review. In 12 months' time, they're going to say, "Yeah, but no." Not going to change. That's what it is. They're not giving America a 12-month reprieve. But the military industrial complex, to keep their share price up, needs Bessent to say, we're getting a 12-month reprieve. Look at the TikTok sale. I saw in September Donald Trump posting, TikTok sale is done. It's still not done. That was a lie. Was that a lie, or did Donald Trump make a mistake? It's a lie.
It's a lie.
Donald Trump lied. And when Donald Trump lies, his elites, his royal family, watch their profits rise, and then everybody else loses money. Everybody's losing money except the people in the know. That's how America works. That's how Donald Trump is working. He's enriched himself to the tune of billions. He's enriched his family. He's just pardoned the Binance guy because Binance have got control of a lot of his money. Now, the deal will be that the Binance will continue to earn him more money. So the guy's got a pardon. He served his time in prison. I think he was there for 4 months. Now he can run the business again. He can run it the way Donald Trump says, I want you to run this business. It's a criminal cartel. It's not just a simple case of, oh, look, America are doing something naughty. It's a criminal cartel. It's a mafia. It's worse than anything the mafia could have done because it's global. It's theft on an industrial scale. That's what they're up to. It's murder on an industrial scale. That is what America is doing.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, you nail it. I mean, no, you're nailing it. I mean,
I thought I left you speechless for a moment. That's unusual.
Well, I just saw the article for a moment I just saw the article recently where it broke down the amount of money that Donald Trump was effectively earning, quote unquote, earning over the course of this administration, just over the course of the last several months that he's been in office. I mean, he's earned like hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah.
Billions. Well, not Donald Trump personally, but his family and his meme coins and his interests. Yeah.
Yeah, it's astonishing. It's just utterly astonishing. And as you point out, for the guy to go into the United Nations, claim that Cuba is committing terrorism, as the United States murders 21 random people in boats that in no way can make it to the United States, let alone
one of whom Colombia has said was a fisherman. Now, he may have been a fisherman. What was he doing in that boat? I don't know. Was he genuinely a fisherman? I don't know. But do they know? We have intelligence. They had intelligence that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. It didn't, and it still doesn't. They had intelligence that these things happen. They don't. They had intelligence that fentanyl's coming from China. They have no evidence. There has never been an item of evidence submitted that proves to me. Now, I'm an ex-cop. I look at evidence and I say, well, can I prove this in a court? If I can't prove it in a court, then it's not really evidence. It's an allegation. It's not really evidence at all until I can contest it. And when I can contest it, when I can challenge it, when I can fight it, and it still stands, then it's evidence. Until then, it's allegations. Let's look at the allegations and see if they stand up in a court of law. If they don't stand up in a court of law, they're nothing more than allegations. I mean, a great example is how many times Xi Jinping has said, we're going to invade Taiwan. America keeps saying this. American media keeps saying this. The deadline is 2025, of which we have about 8 weeks left. America keeps saying, China is going to invade Taiwan in 2025. Well, let's see if that happens, because in all honesty, there's been no evidence that it's going to happen. China has no inkling to invade. All China has ever said is, if anyone decides that they're going to take Taiwan away from China, we're going to defend it from that group. So they will embargo, they will sanction, they will blockade, is probably the best word. They will blockade Taiwan. They won't invade it. First of all, how can you invade your own territory, which the United Nations recognizes it as? But they will definitely blockade it and stop anything coming in except what China wants to put on there, on the island. And they will get rid of the Americans. I saw in Burkina Faso today they've arrested all NGO members and charged them with treason. Now, honestly, I don't know if all of them are guilty of treason. Let's look at the evidence, but they're going to either execute or deport a lot of people if they are working against the interests of that country. If you want to be an NGO, you go into a country to support that country, to help that country, to help the people, to do charitable works, to do good works. You don't go in there to change the regime of that country. And if you do, you can certainly expect to pay the consequences. And that's what the CIA have been doing for 70 years, since the Second World War. The OSS started it, the CIA finished it, and NED has made it legitimate. But that's what they've been doing for a very, very long time.
I want to show you something. This has taken place in Indonesia. Let me see if I can pull this up.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Indonesia raises $842 million in first ever yuan bond. There's
Panda
also
bonds.
Panda bonds, right? There's also something similar taking place, I believe, in Kenya. There's, I believe, Zambia, maybe another one of the countries where this is taking place in, where China seems to be, well, in those countries, in some African countries, there was an exchange basically saying, hey, you can convert your loans into yuan, you can get better rates, etc. And it was a win-win because
slightly different thing. The African things are not bond issues. What they're doing in Africa is they are changing their IMF dollar loans, their World Bank loans. They're changing their dollar loans into RMBs. And what that means is China is saying to them, okay, you've got a loan here. The loan is at 7%. And it's worth, I mean, I don't know the numbers. Let's say it's worth $100 million. $100 million at 7%. We will give you 700 million RMB at 2% with no conditions. Now you can pay off your loan. So they have now loaned this money to these African countries. Kenya is one, Tanzania was another. There's a couple of others as well. The Indonesian thing's an entirely different thing. That is a bond issue where people can borrow money in RMB. So it's a slightly different thing. But the African ones, and people are saying, well, what about the debt trap? Well, yeah, they've just got out of it. The debt trap was what they were in, and now China has got them out of it, and they can now afford to pay back because it's fixed interest at 2%. It has no clauses that say if you don't pay us back, we're going to take away your water, your water, your electricity, your power generation, your oil. That is what the IMF have been doing for 70 years or 50 years. So China has gone in there and said, look, okay, you've got a debt problem here. You can't afford to pay it off. Your annual fee to pay it off is this much. How about we lend you in RMB 700 million, which is 100 million US dollars. You pay off your debt completely. Now, what will happen now is if that country says, let's not pay off the debt. Let's use this money to do something. Now, if they do that, then they're going to be screwed eventually because they have to pay off the Chinese debt and they have to pay off the IMF debt as well. But if they just pay off the IMF debt, now they have reduced their annual outgoings. And at the same time, they've protected their national resources and their national infrastructure. And China is now a permanent friend to that country. And China doesn't ask for anything other than, oh, you've got these resources. Can we buy them off you at market price? That is what China will do. Buy them off them at market price. Now, okay, the market price might be 1% under, 2% under. And Americans will say, oh, look, they're ripping them off. America's been ripping them off for 100 years. Britain ripped them off, France ripped them off, Spain ripped them off, Portugal, Dutch, Germans, they ripped them off for 400 years. China has come along and said, mutually beneficial situation here. We can do this for you. So, yeah, the Indonesian one and the Africans are slightly different. But, yeah, there are other international bonds in RMB too. And what that does is that reduces their exposure to dollars. So, for example, imagine this. If you're in Kenya and you want to go to Tanzania, which is next door, and you want to buy Tanzania's grain, whatever grain they produce. I don't know, but you want to buy Tanzania's grain. So you say, I want to buy all that grain from you. I'll give you, 10 million Kenyan shillings. And they go, we don't want Kenyan shillings. We've got no use for Kenyan shillings. So, we want US dollars. So then Kenya has to go to the US and buy this US dollar, or keep it in or take it from its reserves if it has any reserves. I don't know Kenya's individual situation, but then it uses its US dollars to buy the grain, and Tanzania sends it, and it then has US dollars. And then Eswatini comes along and says, we want to buy something from you, but we only have Eswatini, whatever I don't know the currency of Eswatini, so I probably shouldn't have said that. South Africa wants rand. So you've got this situation where they're all having to go to America and borrow or buy American dollars. Now They don't have to. They can buy in shillings, Kenyan shillings, and Tanzania can sell stuff to China in RMB or in dollars or in rubles or in whatever currency they want. They can do local currency exchanges now, and they don't have to use the SWIFT system, which takes several days, costs a percentage. They can use CIPS, which is done instantly like that, and it costs nothing, a minuscule of a percentage point. It's a very, very tiny point. So they're not paying the American system. They're not using American money as much as they did. And this is the beginning of the end of the dollar hegemony. It's a long, long time before dollars become useless to the world, but it will happen one day. But it's probably not even in my lifetime. It won't happen in the next probably 20 or 30 years, certainly, definitely not in the next 10 years. The dollar will not become a useless currency like the Kenyan shilling might be right now. No. The dollar won't become that. It's a long, long way from that. The dollar is still big. So, if a company, let's say BYD, wants to buy a Hungarian car company, Chinese BYD wants to buy a Hungarian car company, the Hungarian car company, if there is such a thing, says, we don't want this in RMB, we want this in US dollars. You have to use US dollars. So the US dollars is not going away. There are enough US dollars on the market to keep it secure and keep it safe, but its importance is diminishing on a day-by-day basis. And China is leading that, and is one of the main reasons why the US really wants to contain China, because China is leading the world on de-dollarization. And it's there's no BRICS currency, there never will be a BRICS currency, but there will be internal trade in local currencies within BRICS. What people don't realize, they say China is isolated. The West keep telling us China's isolated. They've just signed an enhanced free trade agreement with ASEAN. ASEAN is their largest customer as a group. They have RCEP. RCEP is the regional cooperative partnership, economic partnership with, I think, 7 or 8 countries in Asia. It's the largest free trade agreement in the world. They have an enhanced partnership with the Eurasian Economic Union, which is 5 countries to the west of China. That's the ASEAN one. Yeah, they just did that in Malaysia.
Yep.
Yeah. So, you're absolutely. What's this one? ASEAN. Yeah, this is the ASEAN signature of the Enhanced Free Trade Agreement. So, that is worth a round of applause. The Enhanced Free Trade Agreement with ASEAN means that the whole of ASEAN is now in a free trade bloc with China. The whole of RCEP, some of which are Asian countries, but include Australia as well, are in a bloc of free trade agreements with China. The free trade agreement, or the enhanced agreement that it has with the Eurasian Economic Union, which is Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Russia, Iran, there's a free trading agreement there. So all of the west of China is in this free trading bloc. All of the east and south of China, with the exception of Japan, is in a free trading bloc. So it's a really good position. This is not isolated. China has also signed a free tariff agreement with Africa. 53 of the 54 African countries, and only one, Eswatini, which still recognizes Taiwan and gets paid to do so by the National Endowment for Democracy, that the monarchy, the absolute monarchy of Eswatini is supported by the National Endowment for Democracy and recognizes Taiwan is not part of the African tariff-free arrangement. So every country in Africa can export to China completely tariff-free. That's 53 countries. China now has 96 free trade agreements effectively. Isolated?
Yeah.
I think not. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the opposite of isolated. I mean, that is effectively reaching out to the entirety of the world.
The BRI does more. BRICS does more. I'm only talking about their free trade agreements here. You talk about a collapsing economy? Come and have a look. I welcome you to come to China and have a look. I'll show you this collapsing economy. It's completely the opposite. And people say, well, yeah, but look at the deflation that it's going through. It only had 0.5% inflation. It had 0.5% inflation with 5% growth in income. Now, can you imagine getting a 5% salary increase with 0 or 0.5% inflation? Your cost of living has not gone up, but your income just did by 5% or 6% or 7%. This is what's happening here in China. Every single person is better off than they were a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. They're all better off every time. Now, yeah, they're 5.2% unemployed. They would like that to be lower. Of course, everybody wants that to be lower. Yes, there's a challenge with the youth unemployment, and it spikes every June, and we hear about it. June and July, they say youth unemployment in China is over 20%. Yeah, it is, but a lot of people just graduated. Let's look at where they are in September, October, and November. By the end of the year, youth employment is back down to manageable levels. It happens every year. This is a thing that's going on all the time. They're taking an outlier of China's economy and saying, this is China's economy collapsing. Retail sales were down. Okay, retail sales in shops were down because people are shopping online. Retail sales in online shopping are way, way up. Overall, retail sales are up. Overall, profitability is up. How can you have profitability up when you have overcapacity and deflation? It doesn't work. You can't have both. They're not telling you that profitability is up. They're not telling you that the purchasing managers' indices for services and production are up over the 50%. They're telling you that something is going wrong here. Yeah, shops are closing, restaurants are closing. People are eating at home and takeaways are improving. Restaurants are smaller now with less tables. Not all of them, of course, but you can still get big restaurants. But a lot of restaurants have decided we're going to just have 10 tables instead of 20 tables, but we'll expand the size of the kitchen because we're getting so many orders. The orders are coming in and the delivery drivers. So the online economy, the low altitude economy, which is the deliveries by air, things like this, the low altitude economy, the drone shows, this is incredible. They've actually made an economy out of between the top of my house and a kilometer. There's a whole economy opening up.
Oh, right there. You mean the drones flying food?
Drones, air taxis, air cars, advertising, drone shows. These are all part of, you can have advertising up there. You can pay. One of my local media friends told me, Zhongshan Ribao, our local media group, paid 1 million RMB for 7 days of a drone show. And I went there one night as their guest. It cost 1 million RMB and it was free. I went there and I was there for 40 minutes and I saw the most incredible drone show. And I was there on one night and there would have been 100,000 people there. The next day, probably the same. It went on for 7 nights. There was one night where it got cancelled because the wind was too strong. The typhoon was coming, so they canned it. But yeah, they paid 1 million RMB for this drone show to advertise. That's what's happening.
Well, if we're talking about a weakening economy, so numbers came out. UPS is laying off 48,000, Amazon up to 30,000, Intel 24,000, Nestle 16,000, Accenture 11,000, Ford 11,000, Novo Nordisk 9,000, Microsoft 7,000, and you can go down the list. And from the standpoint of wages, our wages are effectively frozen. They're flat.
Yeah.
We are, however, paying for tariffs. And the report came out, I think this was maybe a couple of days ago. I could find it in my queue somewhere, where it was like over $1 trillion that we as Americans are going to have to pay, or that, let's say, basically in tariffs, but that businesses are going to pass on to consumers or have been passing on to consumers. The overwhelming majority of the money is hitting us. So we are getting hit with inflation and everything else. Like, it's amazing to me that they continuously point the finger at China for this stuff, whereas we are encountering the same pressures, if not more so, especially considering we pay for the tariffs, not the companies. The companies may pay a percentage, but we cover those costs. So
I think there's going to be a certain amount of what they call eating the tariffs. China has eaten some of the tariffs. Companies come, if you've got a company in China and you're manufacturing only for the American market, you're going to have to say, okay, I've got to eat some of this. And you negotiate, we'll absorb 50% of this. Can you do the rest? Now, the biggest problem is today we don't know what the tariffs are. They've been up to 257%. They've been down to 27%. They've been back up to 150%. They're now currently at 57%, I think 57%, and they're likely to change to 157%, depending on the whim of your elected president. That's the problem. So when China says, yeah, we'll make them for you, whatever it is, you want 10,000 widgets, yeah, we'll make them, this is the price. Then the American customer comes back and says, look, I've got to pay on that price. I've got to pay this much. Can you wear part of it? So they say, we'll wear 10, 20, 50, whatever percentage of it. But we want payment up front. Then they have to pay up front because the Chinese company are not going to. What happens when a product arrives in America and the factory or the shop or the retailer, wholesale, whatever the person is, if they're not a huge conglomerate, they get a phone call from the border control which says, hey, we've got your product here. You need to come and pay us X amount of dollars. And they say, well, hang on, I've just paid for it. I paid China for it. I've paid for it. And they're going to say, yeah, you paid China. They've shipped it over here, but you've got to pay us. And then those people are going, well, hang on, how do I pay it? Well, you've got 7 days. Come and pick it up. You've got 7 days to pay it. That's what's happening. So whatever it was that China agreed to pay, and then, of course, we have FOB, freight on board or free on board. What happens is as soon as that stuff is on board, it doesn't get shipped until the user at the other end, the buyer at the other end, has paid for it to be shipped. Then it gets shipped. Once it gets shipped, it arrives in America, it's been fully paid for, and the American buyer goes to the customs office and has to pay another 100%, 57%, 150%. I don't know. They don't know either. They don't know until the day they get it what they're going to pay for it. So then they have to put that onto their margin to recover it. That's a fact. That can't be changed because we make things. I've been in industry in China for a long time. We make things here and we say to our customers, okay, we're making this, we're starting making this, send us 10, 20 or 30, whatever agreed deposit that we have. And then when we start shipping it, we'll give you the paperwork for it to be put on board. You then pay us. Once you pay us, it's gone. We don't have anything more to do with it. It's gone. You've paid us for it. Bye-bye. It arrives in America and someone says, well, I can't afford, I've just paid $20,000 for this container. I cannot afford to pay $17,000 in tax or $25,000 in tax or $100,000. I don't know what the number is. Neither do they until they get there because it depends on the whim of your president. So that's the real big problem. People are being
on a whim, like meaning if when
your president just did this the other day, he said, well, I'm going to put 100% tariffs on China. Is he? He said he is. Now he says, because he's taco, now he says, okay, we won't put that 100% on. That's a negotiating position. So we're going to wait until tomorrow when they meet, and then they're going to have a lovely, cordial, constructive meeting, because they always call it constructive, don't they? And at the end of that meeting, what's going to happen? They're going to be told, this is the new tariff. Now, it may be lower, it may be higher. I don't know yet. but it will change a week later when Donald Trump gets up and puts the wrong socks on or something. I don't know what his decisions are made on. He's really totally unpredictable. But we're not importing soybeans from there anymore. He's sending money to Argentina so Argentina can send soybeans to us. We eat a lot of beans here. I can tell you, a lot. Tofu is huge here, and it all comes from soybeans. I happen to like baked beans, Heinz baked beans and those kinds of things, and they all come from your soybeans. But they're not. Farmers in America now are saying, well, who's buying our soybeans? I don't know.
Nobody.
I don't know.
I mean, they're
well, why should China buy them? They're buying them from Brazil, which is a BRICS country. They're buying them from Argentina because Argentina can afford to sell them cheaper. They're buying them from Australia. They're buying them from Indonesia and a few other places. They're buying these things. And whatever it is that China needs, China is buying from whatever customer can provide it at the best price. And if that happens to be America, so be it. They will buy them from America. China doesn't have, I have never yet met a Chinese person at any level of society. I meet people in fairly high government positions. I've never yet met anyone who dislikes Americans. We don't here. We don't dislike you. We just say, what's going on? What's happening?
It's about primacy.
Yeah.
It's about primacy. I mean, we opened the conversation up with this, where this whole thing of the U.S. wants geopolitical control. I mean, there's a clip where Donald Trump was like, yeah, we should have low tariff. What did he say? We should have low interest rates because if it wasn't for America, the rest of the world would effectively fall apart.
Yeah.
That's the way they think. And so, they're being positioned, or they're running into a peer in a way that the United States have not had to deal with for God knows how long, not in the modern term. And so this is China effectively saying, look, we're a peer. You're going to regard us as such.
Well, I would disregard that statement. China is no longer a peer. There is an organization called the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, ASPI. ASPI hates China with a passion, but they have an annual technology tracker, which they put out. And I think there was 54 technologies in their last one, the 2024 technology tracker, and 47 of them China leads in right now. China is investing heavily in new technology, in new markets, in new diversifications, in its own domestic consumption. The 5-year plan, which came out a few days ago, not the 5-year plan itself, the draft of the 5-year plan, which will be approved by the National People's Congress in March of next year, was released just a few days ago. And that draft in it said all of these things. China is going to do this. It is going to invest heavily inside of itself. China currently has 1.2 million foreign enterprises working inside of China. Many of them are Americans. Hilton Hotel, Marriott Hotel, Sheraton Hotel, KFC, McDonald's, Coca-Cola. They're all operating here in China, and they're all doing very, very well in the Chinese market. Now, obviously, China doesn't want to say to any of those companies, we're going to seize you. We're going to take you because you're American. China has never, ever breached, as far as I'm aware, and people might be able to correct me on this and send me a link to not an American media that says China has breached, but I don't think China has ever breached World Trade Organization guidelines or United Nations charters. Never. As far as I'm aware, it's never happened. And maybe people could argue China invaded Vietnam in 1979. Okay, so yeah, all right, let's go back 45 years and say there's a point where China did something wrong. But most of us weren't even, I was, but most of the people watching this weren't alive then. So, I'm talking about in modern times, modern era, China does not breach UN charters. China does not breach UNCLOS, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. It does not breach criminal law, international criminal law, or the International Court of Justice. It does not breach UN charters. It simply abides by everything that it's set to abide by. And this is why it won't sanction countries like Israel or Russia or Ukraine or any other country for that matter, because it bides its own time and it keeps its own counsel, and it refuses to interfere with the internal affairs of other nations. That's China for you. We could, I mean, a lot of your viewers might be going, well, hang on, didn't they do this? Didn't they? No, they didn't do this. You're told that they did. You're misinformed that they did. China doesn't do this stuff. And
Sure.
you can have articles that say they do, but proving
you would get Scott Benson. Those all sorts of stuff, right?
It's what I said before. Bring me evidence. Don't bring me allegations. As someone asked me what my electricity bill is, I got a huge electricity bill the other day. Is one of the questions here. It was 350 RMB, which is $70 for the month. And that was with air conditioning. I've got the air conditioner running here. It was with air conditioner running 24/7, and I was home for the month, which is quite rare for me. Last month, my bill was 350. So I hope that answers the question that was asked a little while ago. But I think we're winding up. Or do you have another one?
Well, no, I was gonna. What is this woman? Okay, fair enough. No, I was gonna just give you your bio and everything else. You've been with me for an hour. I don't like to overkeep people's time.
I'm very happy chatting with you, as long as you haven't got another guest in the waiting room there. I'm quite
No.
going.
There's not another guest. In fact, my guest just sent me a link, effectively saying that they're carrying out maintenance and they've cut off the electricity for his property.
Well, if you want to keep going, and I'll be your second guest too, if you've got other stuff that you want to talk about. Otherwise,
I wouldn't mind hitting Venezuela for a bit, because Russia has just signed a strategic partnership with Venezuela. Obviously, this is kind of getting across, leave Venezuela alone. There's that, right? There's this clear indication that Russia is sending with that.
Did Russia actually do that? Because I saw a post on X that said China has said, if America invades Venezuela, China will support. And China has never said that at all. That's a lie.
No, Russia did sign a strategic partnerip with Venezuela. Okay. Now, I do know that as a fact. Right. There was a signing ceremony and everything else where Putin, Maduro, so they did do that. I was going to ask about China on this. I don't really pay attention entirely too much to post the X, because they say stuff like that. It's like Xi Jinping says he's going to attack America if blah, and it's like, okay, that doesn't even sound like Xi Jinping, right? Those things come out all the time, and it's always from several accounts. I don't know where they get that stuff from. I guess it's their way of
they
getting
just make it up as they go along. It gets clicks.
But in Russia's case, they do look at Venezuela as a ally. In fact, Rabakov came out and was like, we shouldn't abandon our allies. Basically, we need to not kowtow to imperialist dictates. We need to actually stand by our allies. He was talking in relation to Venezuela. I was going to ask, where does China fall on this? Because, as you point out, there were posts on X that, again, I don't pay too much attention to, but they were indicating that there was this, that China also, which I could believe, would say, hey, you should keep your hands off Venezuela. That's a bad thing. I don't necessarily believe for a moment that they're going to send military support or anything like that in the way that Russia's been doing. But what is China's take on this?
Okay, before I answer that, I'll just answer Jeffrey Dennison's comment, social credit scores. They don't exist. There is no such thing. I promise all of your viewers this. If someone tells you they know someone who has a social credit score in China, I'm telling you, they are lying. They are
that's lying. Interesting. Okay, since you've opened this door, since this door has now been opened, okay, where does that come from? The social credit score thing.
Yeah. Would you like me to ask my wife what her social credit score is?
Yeah, please do.
She knows. She knows the story here. There is no such thing as a social credit score. However, there is a thing called a social credit score. And this is why Western media will often come back and say, yeah, here it is. Here's the Chinese government talking about it. China has a thing that relates to how businesses deal with their community, how they deal with their suppliers, how they deal with their customers. And they call that the business social credit score. So in other words, Chinese businesses must comply with a set of rules and guidelines in order to not have disgruntled customers, in order not to have disgruntled suppliers. There's a social credit score on companies. There is a financial credit score for all individuals who are over 18, have bank accounts, debt loans, and things like that, same as everywhere else. And that is the full extent of the social credit score. There is no such thing for a personal social credit score. Now, what we can do, and I've been involved in charity for many years in China, disabled people mostly, disabled sports particularly, because I ride my bike across China to raise money so disabled athletes can go to competitions and things like that. Now, I've been invited to apply to join this app, or as they call them in China, this APP. I've been invited to join this, and if I were to join it, I would get some points of credit. So then if I get caught speeding in my car, I don't even drive, but if I get caught speeding in my car, if I get caught jaywalking, they look at this and go, this guy's a good guy, let's give him a warning. But then they'll send me a message that says, hey, we know you're a good guy, but you did this wrong, so we're going to give you a warning this time, and you won't get a penalty. If I get a penalty and I get 3 points or 4 points, whatever it is on my license, and I have to pay the fine, I have to pay the fine. I can't get out of that. But I don't want these points on my license. So I can go to the government office and say, I'd like to volunteer. And they say, okay, well, we need people to control traffic on this junction on this day. We'll give you this training. We'll give you a flag and a yellow jacket. And you go and control that junction. And you do that for 10 days, 3 hours a day or 2 hours a day at peak hour. We will give you a reprieve on your 3 points on your driver's license. So you can actually get benefits, but you cannot be punished. There is no system in the world in China, anywhere in China, that punishes you for not doing something other than the punishments that you get for breaking ordinary laws. Drive too fast, don't put your seatbelt on the telephone on your car, whatever it is. If you get a punishment, that's a punishment, but you can work it off on your social credit score. So it is purely for the benefit. Now, there's another aspect to it, which is even more beneficial. If you are a migrant worker, so I know about this from a show that I did with Guangdong Television a while ago. I met a lady who was a migrant worker who came from Gansu to Zhongshan, totally unqualified, 17-year-old girl, 10 years of school education, got a job on the front gate of a factory making clothes as a security guard. After 12 years, she was married, she had a baby, she was working in the factory, she'd moved up through the ranks, been at the same factory all the time, and she wanted to get her child into the local school, so she started volunteering. She was outside the school with the stop slow sign, helping the kids cross the road, doing school dinners and lunches and things like that. And they gave her the credit that she needed to get her kid into the local school instead of sending her kid back to Gansu, where her registration is, and that's where the kid can go to school for free. Every kid goes to school for free, but only in the place where the parents are registered. So she's registered in Gansu, she's living in Zhongshan. Now her kid went to school. I met the kid, he's a university student now. She is now the general manager of the operations of that factory. And she came here as a 17-year-old with no qualifications. And she's a member of the National People's Congress, which is why I was able to meet her. Ordinary lady, very, very nice person, didn't speak a word of English. My Chinese is not good enough. We used a translator. I'm functional, but we used a translator. But that shows you what this can do. This is purely 100% beneficial to the people. So the guy who asked about the credit score, that's the credit score.
Now,
There's
the reason
no
that
negativity about it.
Now, the reason the guy asked that is because in the United States, what you would see is, let's say on Twitter or somewhere like that, it would be a homeless man and he would be on the street and it was like, this guy's credit score dropped too low. So he couldn't get food. It was like, this is what China's, the Communist Party.
How many people in America, I believe the number is about 40% of people in America need food stamps to survive. Now, if that's true, that's a damning indictment of capitalism, because there is no one, not one person legally homeless in China. Now, there are people who live on the streets. Don't get me wrong. There are people who live on the streets, but it's a choice. They have a home. They have a registered home that they can go to. Now, some of these people have slipped through the cracks in the mental health care. Some of them are working migrants who are between jobs. Some of them are people who are just saying, I'm not going to pay 100 or 200 RMB a month. That's like $30. 200 RMB is $30 for accommodation when I can live under this bridge for free. This is how they save their money. So they may be people who are in between jobs. There may be people saving money. There may be people who have fallen through the cracks in the mental health. But they do get asked by the police, are you all right? Do you need anything? And if you do, they will give it to you. They will help you to get housed. There is no such thing as housing. They built some housing accommodation in Shanghai a couple of years ago during a very bitter winter. And they put people in it who were migrant workers choosing to live on the streets because it was bitterly cold. So there's no legal homeless here. No such thing as food stamps. If you don't have enough food, you go into any restaurant and you say, I don't have enough food, and they'll feed you. Every restaurant will do that. And then they'll call the government, and the government will say, why don't you have enough food? Who's looking after you? What's the problem? And you will get help. Every single person in China will get this. No one needs to go hungry in China. There are many, many restaurants that have what they call the number 2 dish. Go in and ask, can I have a number 2, please? They will give you the food and not even ask you. Number 2 dish is the euphemism for I can't afford to eat. No one goes hungry. No one goes hungry. No one goes homeless. Now, yeah, of course, there are going to be people who, rural regions, perhaps there are people, we're not talking about numbers here. We're talking about people who defy the odds, the outliers. But in America, you have 100,000 people a day, or million, I don't know how many, lots of people. 12% of your country, 12% of America live in poverty. No one lives in poverty in China. No one. So we went from Venezuela to the social credit score to homelessness to food stamps. There is no such thing as food stamps here. You will get fed if you need it. Now, no one has. Can you imagine in China, if someone dies of starvation, that would be global news. Never heard of it. Every time someone gets stabbed in China, it's global news. Crime is rife in China. Someone got stabbed. Look over there. That's what they're doing. They say 50 people last month got murdered in America with guns, but look at China because 2 people got stabbed last year. That's what they're doing to you. They are deceiving you with misinformation about China. Yes, you can find some homeless people. Yes, you have some unemployed people. Yes, you do have some people who are hungry, but it's outliers. It's not the reality of China. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the norm. Yeah, here it's you should see the food banks. Our government has not been competent enough to stay open. And so it's been down for over a month.
Yes,
Trump has apparently pulled food from food banks. They were supposed to go. SNAP benefits are about to end.
Yeah, SNAP's an interesting thing. We don't have such a concept. SNAP is a really interesting concept. Chinese people go, what? I said to my wife, this was years ago, several years ago, I said, America has this many, and I can't remember the number, this many homeless people. And she said, why don't they just go back home? She couldn't understand the concept of homelessness. And this is an intelligent lady. She's well-educated, well-traveled. She's been to Europe. She's been to the UK several times. She's been to Australia. She just, why don't they just go home? I said, they don't have a home. Where are their parents? Well, maybe their parents are dead or their parents don't want them. What do you mean their parents don't want them? If they haven't got a home, their parents will take them. This is just a concept that Chinese people cannot get their heads around. You've even created a new word, vehicular residents. People who live in their cars, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
20 years ago, no one in China had a car. Now everyone's got a car. They want to live in it. It's so good. But this is a really crazy, crazy phenomenon. People here cannot get it. Why don't they just go home? It's a very simple question.
It's a different mindset. The individualism thing is often triumphed as this is the gold standard. This is a great thing. But it also breeds individualism, like where,
Yeah.
hey man, I got my issue. You need to figure out yours. Like it's I get the sense that China has a higher social, what do they call it? Social, what's social compassion? That's not the word for it. It is
We have communalism as opposed to individualism. This
right.
is a psychological factor. This is one of there are two very, very famous, globally famous psychologists, Gerd Hofstede and Alfonso Trompenas. These two guys are globally famous psychologists who have identified features of each country. And America is individual, China is communal. China is a communal living. Someone just said it's 1,000 people died last month of gun deaths. That will include the suicides as well. So it's probably, I don't know the number. I was just throwing a number up there for the purposes, but 1,000 people died of gun deaths last month. That's 100,000 a year, more than. So anyway, you have these two guys who have identified different dimensions of culture. The hierarchy, the power distance index is one. People in China respect the hierarchy, the father figure, the teacher, the doctor, the professor, those kinds of people, and the government. And people in America don't have the same degree of respect. So when you look at the power distance index, America is this big and China is up there. So what that is China respects. China wants the government to look after them. Different concept. Then you've got things like long-term orientation.
That's a legitimacy thing too, though. Meaning the power needs to be legitimate and they need to be competent. And when there's not
necessarily, not necessarily so. If your father is a bad father, he's still your father in China. If your mother's a bad mother, if your boss is a bad boss, they're still your boss. There's a hierarchical structure that is accepted. Now, we as Westerners look at this. We've actually gone into my topic. This is what I business consulted on. I have a master's degree in cross-cultural change management, and this is where I focus my issue. Western managers have a philosophy that says this is how we're going to work. Chinese workplace psychology has a very different philosophy that says, no, this is how we're going to work. And never the twain. This is like putting two magnets together the wrong way. They don't go together. So what I had to do for a period of time during my working life was train Western managers at the same time as train Chinese workers to deal with each other. That's how we did it. So this hierarchy is real. Long-term orientation. Chinese businesses will say, let's invest this for the next 20 years because in 30 years' time, this is going to be good. That's how China has done what it's done. It started 25, 30, 40, 50 years ago and said, we're going to do this. Hu Jintao was the guy who said, we're going to scientifically develop China. And Xi Jinping is now continuing it. And it's been going on since Hu Jintao was here 20 years ago. So that's how that changes, long-term orientation. And then we've got things like gratification. Chinese people will eat bitterness, they call it. They will suck horrible societal things in order for their future to be better or their children's future. So you'll see parents sacrificing everything so their children can get ahead and their children will help them later in life. Long-term orientation. So these are the different things that we have in our different cultures that say, why do we misunderstand the Chinese so much as Westerners? Why do the Chinese misunderstand us? But the fact is, Chinese people understand us far better than we understand them. They specialize in understanding us, and we ignore them. And that's part of this dimension of culture. Americans are exceptional. We are special when we're American. You are not. Everybody else is not American, so therefore don't worry about it. And your quote about what Trump said, if it wasn't for us, the rest of the world would be whatever the rest of the world is. I saw that as well. So he says that because he believes it. Not because it's true, but because he believes it to be true. And many Americans do this. It's called American exceptionalism. So yeah, you kind of hit a nail on the head with me there. I could talk about that for hours. And we should probably do another show specifically on the difference between Chinese and Western psychology and cultures that changes that we misunderstand. But that's the problem.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, like I can't believe your wife. It's funny to me because it's hard for me to reconcile a country that doesn't know or doesn't is not overly familiar with homelessness issue or is not overly familiar with people going hungry. I mean, you must understand from our
Oh,
point of
wait,
view
wait.
in the
One
States.
thing, let me correct you there. China went through hunger. China knows poverty. China knows poverty far
Yeah.
better than America knows poverty. America is experiencing poverty now, and you're starting to understand it. China had 100 years or more. So basically, from the end of not even the end, about 1850, all the way through until probably 20 years ago. So 140, 150 years, China has known poverty, serious poverty. I mean, there's stories of 30 million, 80 million, 200 million dying. They're all bullshit.
Yeah.
Every single one of those stories is BS because life expectancy went up, the population grew. But at the same time, they did experience famine. They did experience poverty. My wife was born into a home that had no floor. It was just a compacted earth. The walls were made of straw and bamboo, and the roof was made of bark. And to get water, you went out to the river and got water from the river. And there was no such thing as electricity when she was born, and she's 52 years old. So that's how recent this is. Her parents now, they're not rich in any way, shape, or form. They're both retired. They're in their 80s. And they live in a 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom home, which has 3 floors and a shop on the ground floor that they rent out to somebody else, which is their source of income. So you can see now how this has really changed in the last 40 years since Deng Xiaoping, since open reform. Mao set the foundations for it, and you can say what you like about Mao. The Chinese love him. So whatever you think about him doesn't matter. Chinese love him. But they only love him 70% because 30% of what he did was wrong because he was old and the Cultural Revolution and a few other things. But they do adore this guy. He set the foundation for where China is today. And China now has a middle class larger than Europe. Europe, the whole of Europe, a middle class in China larger than Europe.
And again, I just want to go back to this point about the whole the idea of hierarchy. That's not because of competence. Like that's not because of China has shown a consistent track record over the course, meaning within the course of your wife's life, she went from a mud hut for all intents and purposes to modernity within a lifetime.
Yeah.
And if you were living in a society like that, you can look at the people saying, they're competent. And because they're competent, we give them due credit. We give them due legitimacy. And the legitimacy is the issue. But you're saying it's not really the legitimacy. It's the fact that they're in hierarchy, like in a hierarchical structure itself, meaning we accept the hierarchy, whether they're legitimate or not.
Yes and no. The hierarchy thing is a different thing. I'm talking about in the family, in the workplace, in the schools. I was a teacher here for 13 years as well. Students here are very well behaved because they have a respect. It's an inherent respect for teachers. Employees will do what their boss demands of them, even if that means working unpaid overtime and stuff like that, because the boss demanded it of them. It's a respect that they have. So yeah, there's a hierarchical structure, but there is also something else that's come about more recently, and that is changes to those cultures, mostly brought about by exposure to the West. Many people, particularly where I live in the Greater Bay Area, go overseas to study. And then they come back and they have different ideas. So there's a dilution of the old system happening right now. As we speak, it's happening. And I'm witnessing this. I've been here 20 years. So yeah, I'm witnessing it. And I do speak very highly. Someone says, wow, gee, this guy speaks higher of China than Chinese people. Yeah, I do. Because I've been here for 20 years and I've seen it go from poverty, from pollution, from corruption to what we see today, which is very different. There's very little in the way of corruption. It's not systemic. It does exist. It's not systemic. There is no crime, absolutely no street crime at all. I have not seen an assault, a robbery, a burglary. I haven't seen a theft in 10 years. I haven't seen one. Now, I'm a guy who's trained to look for this. I was a police officer for 10 years. I haven't seen an incident where somebody was violent or aggressive. There's no road rage. I haven't heard of a rape, a robbery, or a burglary in the last 10 years. I'm not saying they don't happen, but
Right.
they're very, very rare. So we're seeing society has changed because people say, well, I don't need to do that anymore. I don't
Wow.
need those things. I don't have poverty, so I don't need to steal food. I don't need food, so there's no need to steal it. It's a very different society. There is a lot of surveillance, and a lot of people say it's because of the surveillance. No, people in China don't think like that. They think that surveillance makes me safe. People in the West think that surveillance is invading my privacy. Very different cultures. That's all they are.
Right.
Yeah. So education is another thing. 60% of Chinese students go to tertiary education. 60%. That is now higher than America, and everyone can afford it. This is an amazing thing. A bachelor's degree in China will cost you about $3,000. A master's degree might cost you $5,000.
Are you serious?
Yeah. I did a master's
30,000
degree
a
in the
year.
UK. It cost me £20,000, and that was years ago. Now, I come here, I can do a master's degree for 12,000 RMB. 12,000 RMB is less than $2,000 for a master's degree. That's because I'm a foreigner and I can go into certain schools that take foreigners. But my wife wants to, if she wanted to, would probably cost her about 35,000 RMB to do a master's degree. It cost her 20,000 to do a bachelor's degree. 20,000 is 3,000 US dollars. Wow. She did that as an adult as well. Both of us have been adult students in China.
Jerry, you are awesome. Thank you for this. You are absolutely awesome. I am always amazed by some of the stuff that is coming up from the China thing in comparison to the way that the U.S. talks about it. It's so different in the way that it's such a clash. In the way that these
everything that you hear in the West is misinformation about China. Everything.
Jerry Gray, host of Jerry's Take on China. He's lived in China for more than 20 years, has traveled more than 40,000 kilometers across the country. Check him out on his YouTube channel. Jerry, thank you for this, man. You be safe. You have a good night. I know it's late there.
Thank you, Jamal. I'll see you again next time. And thank you to your audience once more and the questions that come up.
Yeah, I see. I see them popping up on the side.
You're going to have to go through those questions and compile another list for the next time I'm on.
I will do that. I will get them to give me a list. I will get them to give me a list.
Do it.
You be
do
safe.
it. I don't
Thank
mind.
you, man. All right. I see my man in the background, Esteban Carrillo. How you doing, Esteban? You doing okay this morning?
Hey, Jamal. Good morning. I'm doing great. Hope you're doing well as well.
I am doing fine. Esteban Carrillo, he is Ecuadorian journalist, currently writing for The Cradle, previously with the great Telesur English. And again, The Cradle does fantastic work. You guys
Thank
do
you so much.
Amazing work. I saw the article that you guys did on, what is that asshole's name? Tom
Barak, basically.
Yes, that asshole. I mean,
Yes.
he is the one that's been trying to instigate a civil war in Lebanon.
Yes.
And you guys wrote the article where he came out, was like, look, this is my last time in Lebanon. I'm trying to help you out.
Yeah. He gave the ultimatum. This is like the second or third ultimatum he's given to Lebanon, but he is a bastard.
I know, but the idea that you're saying, like, I'm trying to help you have a civil war.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help. And you guys aren't, so
Not
this
budging.
is gonna be my last time coming here. It's just astonishing. Like, that he says stupid stuff like that. And then he gets angry when they're asking him questions. He was like, you guys need to act less like animals.
Yeah, we cannot be animalistic, to journalists. I mean, it's truly, truly a repulsive figure, this man. Best friends with Jeffrey Epstein, by the way, a few years ago.
I'm not shocked by that.
Yeah.
I'm not shocked by that. Not shocked by the company that he keeps. Not at all. Before I want you on to hit Venezuela, but before I hit the Venezuelan thing, I do want to hit Gaza real quick. Mm-hmm. So Israel has just murdered 90 people, apparently.
Yeah.
Donald Trump apparently co-signs the murder of those 90 people, saying, hey, man, Israel has to strike back. And then says, but it's not going to affect the ceasefire. which is astonishing to me, right? It doesn't sound like a ceasefire if you can murder 90 people overnight. And they are claiming that apparently, and there's no corroborating evidence for this at all, by the way, that Hamas murdered an Israeli soldier. What do you know about this? Because I haven't seen any corroborating evidence for this at all.
I mean, we know what the Israelis claim and what the Palestinians have said, which is the Israelis claim a sniper fire killed some Israeli soldier in the south in Rafah, which it's under Israeli control, and not just Israeli control, it's under the control of the Israeli troops and of the gang of Yasser Abu Shabab, this ISIS-linked smuggler. You know, he had an op-ed at the Wall Street Journal just a couple of months ago, but they are in control of these areas, so it's kind of strange, right? And the last time they broke the ceasefire, although, you know, the ceasefire has been violated on a near daily basis, if you count, you know, the lack of food entering the strip, or the fact that there's no medicine still inside Gaza. These are also violations. It's not just about killing Palestinians, of which they killed, from the last count I saw 104 Palestinians killed over strikes that lasted for about 12 hours. So at the last time when they violated the ceasefire, like bombing Gaza in this way a few days ago, they also claimed that sniper fire, you know, had hit some of their soldiers in the south. And what the Qassam brigades, you know, their explanation for even the possibility of this happening was, well, if this happened, which we don't know if it did, there's no verification, is we have some of our brigades in the south. We lost contact with them months ago due to the you know, the intensity of the Israeli genocide. So now, if they are getting shot, they're not even getting the orders from, you know, whatever central command Qassam has. But as we know, as you already pointed out, there's really no verification of this. It's just the Israeli claim, and apparently it's because, I mean, in reality, it seems that it's based on the fact that Qassam fighters are not finding the bodies of Israeli captives quickly enough. You know, in the site of a genocide where over 200,000 tons of explosives were dropped. So what can you do?
Yeah, which is mind-blowing, that their response to, hey, we need you to give us the dead body, we need it now, or else we're going to murder a lot of your people.
Yeah,
that's outrageous.
And the, you know, the U.S. is supposed to be the guarantor. Just last week there were like 4 or 5 U.S. officials just coming and going from Israel, trying to, you know, handhold the ceasefire. And now when they want to come in and kill about 100 and something Palestinians, they completely get, you know, the approval from Washington and Donald Trump saying this is not a violation of the ceasefire. We really live in absurd times, Jamal.
Yeah, it's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous. One last point on this, the partition plan. So from my understanding, and this is mind-blowing also, Israel wants to get billions of dollars of support in order to build up areas to the areas to which they're occupying. Meaning, and I don't mean occupying in the traditional way that they've been occupying Gaza. I mean in the physical military occupation of the territory, where they have been even expanding that yellow line, or whatever the hell they call it, a yellow zone, where the Israeli military has just been squatting, because it becomes clear that they're going to stay. They're not going anywhere, right? And so they've decided, well, we're going to get billions of dollars from some source, probably either Qatar, or Saudis, or UAE, wherever the money is going to come from. And we're going to build up this area. Screw the Palestinian area. That is amazing. Like, we need to dispense with this idea that this is a quote unquote ceasefire.
No, it's not. Yeah, it's just, you know, a switch, a different method, a different methodology for the same outcome, which is, you know, mass killings, mass displacement. I mean, just last night they proved it, right? They can come in at any time, kill over 100 Palestinians, and then everybody will just shrug their shoulders and be like, well, you know, that happened. As far as the yellow line, Israel at this point controls, I think it's about 58% of the Gaza Strip. You know, and it's interesting because you must have seen the Jared Kushner interview in 60 Minutes with Steve Witkoff.
Yes, the plan.
In which they talked about Kushner. Well, Witkoff, first of all, let the cat out of the bag, right? When he said, we've been working on this master plan for about 2 years, to the dismay of Kushner. And then Kushner says something. Exactly. And then Kushner says something, which is, he said, there's a safe Gaza and then there's an unsafe Gaza. I'm paraphrasing, but this is the sentiment he expressed. And that's it. It's it right there, right? They are trying to portray the areas under Israeli control as the areas where development and reconstruction and aid and security, is going to be guaranteed. And then the areas in which the Palestinian resistance remains in control, as chaotic, anarchic, bombs keep dropping, they violate the ceasefire, etc. So the civilization versus the animals, the same narrative that has been established from the very beginning of this genocide. And now you also have, the conditioning of the aid. You're going to see the conditioning of the aid, which is going to come. I mean, the funds, the reconstruction funds, which are going to come from the Gulf. They are going to come from Saudi Arabia, from Qatar, and they are already conditioning Hamas disarmament before being, actually coming in to do any actual reconstruction in the areas that are still actually under Palestinian control. And at the same time, as part of this, master plan, as Steve Witkoff called it, you have Israel and the UAE funding 4 Palestinian militias in the yellow zone, in the yellow line. One of them, Abu Shabab, another one, linked to Fatah, to the Palestinian Authority, and all of them contrarian to Hamas, collaborating with the Israeli occupation. So it's just building this, a manufacturing consent for the continued ethnic cleansing and for, what were they talking about? The re-education, the de-radicalization of the Palestinian population. Just this, like I said, not an actual ceasefire, not peace. Just let's switch gears. Let's change it up. Let's do something different that at least allows us to keep some of these news out of the headlines. Because the headlines now are shifting, right? They're shifting to Venezuela, they're shifting to Sudan as well, which I found to be a bit surprising, but they're shifting.
Yeah, it's that, right? It's like, hey, let's take a ceasefire, let's rest our soldiers, let's rearm, let's get the world to calm down, because the world was being very pissed off at us. And you can imagine, like, Europeans and everything else is okay. They can turn their eyes away now because there's a ceasefire, and so this issue is settled. Yes. And now that this issue is settled, we can now go about murdering Palestinians again. So, like, on an average day, within the context of the war, they were killing 90 Palestinians, 100 Palestinians. On average, just did that yesterday, right?
Exactly.
So it's like, and they're doing it into this context of ceasefire. It's like the Lebanon model in the way that they were talking about it once before.
In Lebanon, they killed over 400 people since the ceasefire was implemented. So what ceasefire?
Yeah, what ceasefire? I keep asking, what ceasefire? The idea this was a ceasefire is nonsense. So yeah, it's just mind-blowing. Do you think that money is really going to come in?
Conditioned, yes, completely conditioned, controlled. This is not going to be, Palestinians being allowed to reconstruct themselves. This is all going to be conditioned on the disarmament, on the de-radicalization. I think we're going to start seeing some reconstruction in the yellow line for sure, because they need to portray this, right? They need to advance the narrative that there's a safe Gaza and an unsafe Gaza. I think at the same time, I'm not sure exactly how it's going to look, because you're talking about millions of tons of rubble that the UN has said is going to take about 15 years to clear. That is obviously going to release toxic gases, that you have an unimaginable amount of unexploded ordnances underneath the rubble. There's also the bodies hiding beneath the rubble that once they start coming out, how are you going to pretend that they're not there? How are you going to hide that just a rising number of casualties from the genocide? Because at this point, the health ministry still says about 68,000. But every scientific study over the past 2 years have said that's undercounting it by at least 40%. And then, you have to consider non-violent deaths as well. I really do not know how it's going to look, but I think that the funds will start to come in at least in certain areas, and you're gonna need to put some pictures up, right? You need to put up some pictures of, like, hey, we built a new house, we built a new hospital, we built something. Like, there's something being developed here to justify continuing to talk about a ceasefire and the idea that there can be a safe Gaza. But I feel like this is not immediate too, because these would all be part of the phase 2 of the ceasefire, and we're still in phase 1.
Yes. Yeah. Just amazing. Just breathtakingly.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a debate on the show the other day that was maddening to listen to, because it felt like one of the people was trying to whitewash genocide or try to equate these two things as equals, like Hamas and this terrorists on the Israeli side. It is maddening to listen to when people do that. And it's like when you deal with the real physical world reality of what's taking place. It's like, dude, they just murdered 100 and some people yesterday. How do you justify that? Well, you can't justify that. How do you justify what's taking place in the West Bank? Well, you can't justify that, right? Hamas is not in the West Bank. But that's besides the point, I suppose. So they tried to kidnap Maduro. And they tried to bring his pilot in on this. Basically, hey man, we'll give you a ton of money. We need you to take Maduro to a location where we can effectively steal him away and imprison him in some particular place. That is amazing to me. And of course, there's also some military hardware that is being built up. Aircraft carriers that have been brought to the region. So the Gerald Ford is now in the region. Apparently, there's another ship in the region that has been assisting in the murdering of Venezuelans, Colombians, etc. Given what is going on with this? I mean, the reporting that came out pointed out that they know that there's no fentanyl in Venezuela.
Yeah.
They know it, that this is about oil and getting their hands on the oil resources, with Marco Rubio effectively running the show on this. Mm-hmm. How is Latin America going to deal with this? Because Latin America has to know that they're lying.
You would imagine, you would hope so, but I don't think it's such a prevalent, perception that this is a lie. I mean, it's obvious, it's apparent. Really? All of the UN reports say. Unfortunately, Jamal, look at what happened in Argentina this weekend. The Argentinians are suffering. They're like eating their shoes for dinner. They are suffering as much as any other country in an economic crisis has suffered, and yet they go and vote for this lunatic.
Right. I did not understand that election, by the way.
They vote for this.
I saw that madman running through the streets, and I'm like, what the hell just happened?
So I think, this goes to show you that while many things may be apparent to us looking in from the outside, because I am at this point also outside of Latin America, looking from the inside in, sometimes, the power of the media, the power of these narratives that have been perpetuated right now, in particular, leftist forces in Latin America, I feel like they have lost, except for one in particular, and that is Mexico, the Mexican president and the Morena party. I feel like everywhere else except Mexico and maybe Honduras, they have kind of lost their grip in talking to the people, and like in establishing their own narratives, as opposed to the hegemonic narrative, which is Nicolas Maduro is a dictator, a narco dictator now, a narco terrorist dictator now, according to Donald Trump, and he deserves to be, like Venezuela needs to come in with bombs. The U.S. needs to come in with bombs and liberate Venezuela, because the lessons from Iraq, from Syria, from Libya, from Afghanistan, they have all been lost to the larger population, or to a very big chunk of the population. I don't want to generalize here, but I feel like this idea that the U.S. is the savior and they will come, like the Avengers are coming in to save us, it still exists in a large measure. So, this display, this saber rattling that Donald Trump is doing by like deploying so many thousands of troops and aircraft carriers, just militarizing the Caribbean, it's for his own audience, right? It's for MAGA, like the killing of these fishermen. It's meant to show like, oh, I have I'm tough on crime, I'm tough on drug dealing, even though, as you just said, there's absolutely no evidence that Venezuela produces fentanyl. There's plenty of evidence that shows that most of the cocaine that flows into the U.S. comes out of Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, and enters through the southwest of the U.S., through the Pacific, or through Mexico itself. And then you actually have evidence that Venezuela has reduced cocaine production in their country, but facts don't matter. What matters is the narrative, is saying, Nicolas Maduro is a brutal dictator, and we're gonna, replace him with the Nobel Prize Peace winner now. This woman who is like, trumpeting the invasion of her own country. So we live like in an upside down reality at this point, and I unfortunately feel like many people in Latin America do not really see the immensity of the danger that it means for the U.S. to come in and start bombing one of our countries, or just what they're doing now. The killing of fishermen is over 40 people killed. Maybe some of them were drug traffickers. We will never know. We will never know if there were actual drugs in those boats. What we do know is that these boats couldn't even think of reaching U.S. shores.
Yes.
And the survivors, those who have survived, up to this point, I think there's 3 survivors. 2 of them were already sent back to their own countries. And when they arrived, they were sent to Ecuador and Colombia. They weren't prosecuted because there was no evidence that they had done anything wrong, that they were drug traffickers. And in Trinidad and Tobago, which has also lost some of their own fishermen, their families have also said, or they weren't drug traffickers. There were no drugs in these boats. So again, it's about the narrative. The facts, they can just go out the window for all it matters.
I just can't believe that they look at Iraq, Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, and they think to themselves, well, I mean, Iraq didn't have weapons of mass destruction, but hey, maybe Maduro is a narco president. Like that's astonishing to me that that's what they come up with. And
it's so lazy, no?
What'd you say? You call it lazy?
I said it's so lazy. It's like it's not even imaginative anymore. It's just kind of like repeating the same thing over and over.
Very true. And you mentioned Maria Machado.
Mm-hmm.
So she comes out and is given an interview.
Once Maduro goes.
Listen to what she says here. This is amazing to me because, again, this is this nonsense, right? Like they would see us as liberators in the way that they were talking about Iraq when the war was taking place.
Exactly.
I've heard recently some people talking about that, once Maduro goes out, because it will leave soon, there's this risk of civil war or unrest. Give me a break. We're talking about a country where 90% of the population, we all want the same.
She is arguing that 90% of Venezuela wants Maduro to go. That is mind-blowing.
I mean,
90%.
If this were true, you'd see people on the street right now. You'd see people in Caracas right now, but she wants you to think that this is, that people are just being rounded up by the thousands, by the tens of thousands and disappeared in this government, when the reality is, of course, Venezuelans don't want an invasion of their country. Who would, in the right mind, would want a U.S. invasion of their country, after everything we have seen? You have to hate your own nation. You have to hate your own people, and you have to have such a thirst of power. Every time I see these women talk, all that's left for her is to drool. She's thirsting for power so much. It's in her eyes, it's in her posture, it's just the way she uses words. This woman is desperate for this to work out, right? The Venezuelan opposition has been a master at showing their ass over the past 2 decades. That's why the people don't like them. Nicolas Maduro could be the worst leader in the world, but Venezuelans agree the opposition would be worse.
Yeah. I mean, she wins, ironically, a Nobel Peace Prize as she's advocating for her country to be bombed. Ain't that something? That's just mind-blowing. I mean, not only does it Nobel Peace Prize needs to just go the way of the dinosaurs at this point, but
completely.
She is, deranged. Like 90% of nobody agrees on anything, right? Like the idea that 90% of Venezuelans are like, yeah, we all want the exact same thing.
I mean, they might want political change, but bombs are never going to bring political change. Look at Gaza. Look at Gaza. Look what did Israel achieve politically or strategically by bombing, by destroying Gaza. Hamas still there. They reconstituted their forces almost overnight, right after the ceasefire started, right? Venezuela, it's obviously no match for the U.S. militarily, but let's remember, one of these ships, the USS Gerald Ford, that is coming to the Caribbean, had just spent the past year and a half dodging Yemeni missiles and Iranian drones in the Red Sea, to the point that they literally had to wave the white flag and say, you know what, we cannot fight this battle anymore. Now, Venezuela, it's a country that has Russian air defenses, that has, they have an air force. They have fighter jets, they are no match, of course, to the F-35, to the F whatever, but they're not in there. They can defend themselves. They have like 8 million people that have joined the Bolivarian militias. So I don't know what the hell she's talking about with these 90% of Venezuelans want a regime change by war.
Esteban, she's out of her mind, and I'm going to let you go. You are
Thank
awesome.
you very much.
Thank you for this. I really do appreciate it. Esteban Carrillo, Ecuadorian journalist, currently writing for The Cradle, previously with Tele Sur English. You have a good show, man. Thank you for this. You be
You
safe,
as well.
okay?
Always a pleasure. Bye-bye. Jamar.
Bye-bye. All right. Esteban is fantastic. Always appreciate when he can join me. Esteban, by the way, has another show. So definitely, if you get the opportunity, check out his show also. In fact, I probably should have gotten the name of that show specifically. But look, this is deranged. I mean, she is, just to be very clear, what's taking place here? She is arguing, well, she's argued in the past that the United States should attack Ecuador to depose Maduro. Now that the Trump administration has effectively put huge amounts of military force and has been murdering ostensibly her countrymen who have not been doing anything wrong, she most likely knows that this is nothing to do with cocaine, nothing to do with the shifting narratives that Donald Trump is effectively coming up with. But she seems to be okay with the United States murdering random Venezuelans off the coast. And for that matter, Donald Trump ramping up to potentially attack Venezuela militarily, directly. Now, considering that Marco Rubio wants a coup, Donald Trump has agreed upon this notion of a coup because this is a way for them to secure the oil and the other mineral resources that's in Venezuela. She has to know, and clearly doesn't care, that this is going to kill a lot of Venezuelans, not to mention cause all sorts of instability. What's wild about this is her argument is, hey, I know some of you think that this may cause a civil war by getting rid of Maduro. You may think that, but don't worry about it. Trust me, it'll be all right. There will be no civil war. There will be no chaos. 90% of the population, basically nearly 9 out of every 10 person here, wants Maduro to go. And so when you overthrow the government, even if it's by force, everybody will run onto the streets. They'll have lilies and they'll throw flowers, and they'll be happy as a lark. And we'll put together a government with me in charge as a puppet. And of course, I can give the oil and everything else to Donald Trump if that's what he wants. She's out of her goddamn mind. This is
talking about that, once Maduro goes out, because it will leave soon, there's this risk of civil war or unrest. Give me a break. We're talking about a country where 90% of the population, we all want the same. There are no.
She has, I'm not going to say that. It sounds impolite. But she has a Joker-esque look. Is it just me? Like, am I getting this wrong? Let me go back to the point where it came to mind. Where is it? There it is. Give me that smile. Give me. There it is. There it is. Joker. Make you famous. Oh, that's not the Joker saying I make you famous. That looks like the Joker. That is Heath Ledger. If Heath Ledger came back from the grave, this is what Heath Ledger would look like. That is amazing. She looks like the Joker. She is a complete clown. And yet, the fact that the Nobel Peace Prize award was given to her gets across how much of a clown that award has become. I mean, hell, you can make that argument at the point where Obama got it, that it was basically nonsense. But nevertheless, here we are. And just to go further into the story, U.S. federal agents secretly attempted to recruit Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's personal pilot as part of a plot to capture the leader and deliver him into American custody on drug trafficking charges. All of this is made up, by the way, meaning none of this is real. Now, the story that the CIA was in Venezuela, that was real. And what's funny about it is Donald Trump outed the fact that the CIA was in Venezuela, and CIA agents got caught going into Venezuela. Does Donald Trump know that the Central Intelligence Agency is supposed to work in the shadows? It's supposed to work in the darkness. And if you are going on a megaphone saying, we have the CIA in Venezuela, and you're screaming it, in a megaphone, that you alert the people that they're there, which means they are no longer in the shadows. That means, that is the opposite of being in the shadows. Now, I would imagine Maduro and his intelligence services might have known that was already the case, in which case those people got caught. Those people got caught. Those people got arrested. Good for them. Good for them. It is amazing that we are doing this. It is amazing that the American public just sits by and is like, oh, well, I mean, hey, man, sometimes you got to kill some people in Venezuela. And somehow completely justifies what we're doing here. This fig leaf of a particular argument, right? It's like there's weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And that becomes clearly not true. Donald Trump was working with the Russians. That becomes clearly not true. And then you get, well, he's a drug kingpin. That's what it is. He's a drug kingpin. So, he's shipping fentanyl to the US. So every person we murder saves 100 million Americans. And America's like, sounds good enough. Sounds good enough. That sounds plausible. Sounds plausible. And they run with it. And when the media reports it, they report it in this dumb framing of, well, Donald Trump is murdering people in boats because Donald Trump says that they're carrying drugs. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Can that boat even reach America? That's not going to be in the article. Does it make sense for a boat that small to carry drugs all the way to America in one, meaning, does it make sense? If you're going to take that trip to America, aren't you going to ideally carry more weight in a way that you can get to America without having to refill like 5 times? They're not going to ask that. They put this dumb framing. Now, let's be honest. The framing is only there to give a patina, a whiff of credibility to something that Americans probably don't care one way or the other, whether it's credible or not. If the president wants to go murder a bunch of Venezuelans in order to get rid of Maduro, okay, just give us a random reason, and we'll accept that random reason, and we'll run with that random reason, and we'll go and continue our Xbox, have sex with our wives or mistresses or whatever. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. But we are also the country that was perfectly okay backing a genocide. So there is that. And we will have people who argue in defense of that genocide. So there's that. So it's grotesque. It's disgusting. And yet, here we are. Here we are. Garland is going to be on the show in a few minutes. What time is it? Right, he's going to be here in about 10 minutes. So, and one last point on this before we go. This part, there is an annoying quality to commentators who are in, let's say, this space. And I don't mean my channel. I just mean the space of political commentary coming out of the States. Some of them find themselves as creatures on the right, even though much of the tenor that they would take will be anti-war. Okay, I'm gonna call him out. Judge Napolitano. Screw it. I love Judge Nap, right? I love the show. So this is no shade to Judge Nap. But there is a tendency on that show to act as if Donald Trump is being manipulated, to act as if Trump is unaware, that he's just being led around, that he's being misinformed, and that the American president is being sold a bill of goods by the people who are around him, and that he is just a blind horse that is led into all of these different directions, dumb as a box of rocks, and doesn't know anything more than the coloring book that they put in front of him and the lines that they give him to repeat. I think that's nonsense. I agree that Trump is dumb as a box of rocks. Agreed. We're on the same page. 1000% agree. But this idea that Donald Trump is completely unawares seems to remove agency from Trump and seems to give him a pass when ultimately it is his job to be aware. Meaning, for all intents and purposes, when you're looking at the idea of the president, who did Trump choose? Trump didn't choose Colonel McGregor to be around him. Trump didn't choose, pick some random general that is, let's say, less interventionist in the way that they go about their affairs. Trump chose neocons. He chose hardcore lunatics, neocons. They were around him, rabid, racist, Jewish supremacist Zionists to be around him. A president, who they choose, people of policy. If I'm choosing this guy, I'm choosing this guy because I want this guy to affect a particular policy. I'm not choosing him randomly. It's not like I'm picking Bob, and I know Bob is a lunatic neocon, but I'm going to act as if, I have a dovish policy, but it's nonsense. You're choosing people because those people on some level toe or denote the policies that you want to put forth. So if we're making this argument that Donald Trump is being led by the nose, Trump chose the people to lead him by the nose. Trump knows he's incompetent. He is deeply insecure. No one who is secure with themselves will require this level of sycophants to be around him to lick his ass from morning to night. Nobody. People who are insecure require ass lickers from morning to night. Sir, your ass smelled delicious today. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. No, sir, your ass smells fantastically delicious. Oh, I like that compliment. I like that. You added fantastic to the delicious comment. I like that better. No, sir, your ass smells delectable. Ooh, that's a new word. I need to look that word up. Meaning most people don't want that in their life on a daily basis. These are the people who Donald Trump effectively pay and surround himself with. If these people are lunatic neocons, meaning if you're putting Rubio in that position, you know what you're getting. If you're putting Kellogg in that position, you know what you're getting. I'm pointing out that this is not a random occurrence, right? We are pretending as if, or we're supposed to believe that Trump knows nothing about anything. That that he wants to get a deal, which I don't buy. I think he may want a deal in conceptual terms, in the concept of an American deal, in a way that will make America look good. But that deal is not on the table. That deal is not available. And so it's like, yeah, I want a six-pack. I'm not going to the gym, so I'm not getting this six-pack. So how much do I really want the six-pack? Yes, Trump may conceptually want a deal, but he doesn't have the mental wherewithal. He doesn't have the stamina. He doesn't have the IQ. He doesn't have the political competence. He has none of the constituent elements necessary for him to get that deal. And as an American president, it is almost impossible for him to accept a deal on the terms that Russia would demand. Losers don't get to dictate terms, meaning Donald Trump doesn't get to dictate terms in regards to what he wants. He, for all intents and purposes, would have to accept the deal from the Russians. So for all of these people who are acting as if Trump really wants a deal, he wants a deal, he really wants a deal, he wants this, he wants that. Can he accept the deal on Russian terms? Yay or nay? An honest assessment is no. Okay. Why do you keep telling me about Zelensky? Which they keep bringing up. Well, I mean, if Zelensky doesn't want the deal, I mean, what can Donald Trump do? He can walk. Trump can walk. Figure it out on your own. He can walk. I know he can walk because Donald Trump kept saying he could walk. He was like, hey, man, if you don't accept my deal, I can walk. Okay, well, why are you saying that? That doesn't hurt the Russians. That hurts the Europeans and Zelensky, right? They know, or Trump knows, that the Europeans can't carry the war on its own. He knows that as a flat fact. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used that threat. He's using that threat because he knows it is a threat. It is a cudgel. It is something that tries to compel and push to get his way. Well, he was never going to do it. European knows he's not going to do it. Zelensky knows he's not going to do it. And Trump at this point apparently has just accepted that he's not going to do it. So where do you end up? You end up where you are, with Russia saying, this is what we need to end the war. And Trump deciding, well, I'm going to escalate. Okay, well, if he is escalating, does it really look like he's trying to end the war? If Trump is backing terrorist attacks, which he was, if Trump and the United States is effectively working with HIMARS in order to go after dams that's going to kill hundreds, if not 1,000 people. Does that look like somebody trying to end the war? And Donald Trump is running an oil war against the Russians, which he was. And this is after Putin responded to the deal that Donald Trump effectively gave. How on earth does this look like somebody who's trying to end a war? It's looked like somebody who's trying to get leverage in order to get a better deal. Again, a better deal that is not on the table for him to get. I hope you get my point. We're acting as if Trump is just blissfully unaware, but the moves that are effectively being made, these are moves that the presidency is effectively running on some level. These are not moves that are being made just outside of eyeshot of Donald Trump. These are policy choices that are being made. And so I don't like this thing of trying to act as if somehow to absolve the president of blame when in reality it is his war. It's his war, full stop. This is Trump's war. Trump could have walked on day one. Trump didn't want to walk on day one. Trump doesn't want to look bad. He doesn't want to get a deal where everybody's going to scream at him that he got had by Putin, that Putin owned him, and all of this other stuff. So instead, he thinks, well, Vladimir, make a deal with me, man. Come on, man. Missing and being so comically dumb as to now recognize that your personal relationship has nothing to do with the philosophical responsibility you have with the various countries or with whatever country you're in. Trump doesn't get this because from Donald Trump's point of view, being president is just a way to monetize his brand. So Putin has a more higher responsibility in that sense and tells him very politely, this is what I need to end the war. If you give tomahawks to Ukraine, I will destroy Ukraine. Just be aware. In which case, Trump backs off for the time being. I'm trying to point out that given Donald Trump, this idea of a pass is nonsense. Trying to act as if he's being led by the nose, as if he was a horse with blinders on, I find it to be nonsense. And yes, he's dumb, but I don't necessarily think he's that dumb that all things being equal, the president is filled with hubris, meaning all presidents have this level of hubris and have this level of hegemonic responsibility of maintaining the hegemony. And Donald Trump has that every bit as much as Obama had it, every bit as much as Joe Biden had it, every bit as much as Bill Clinton had it. And you can go down the line of presidents, meaning regardless of his intellectual capabilities, he still goes in a particular direction. And that direction is, I don't want to look bad. I don't want to accept a deal that makes me look like an asshole, or at the very least that makes me look like I've been had by the Russians in this case. And so I need to push to try to get something better where I can come out saying I somehow won as America. That's not on the table. And if that's not on the table, does he really want a deal? Again, not conceptually. Yes, I want a six-pack. No, I'm not going to the gym. I think Trump wants a deal in a way that I want a six-pack, which means he does want a deal. I see my man in the background. The man, the legend, Garland Nixon. How you doing, man? You doing okay this morning?
Great talking to you, man. I watch your shows. Believe it or not, I watch your shows every day. Not necessarily in the morning, but you know, over the course of the day, I'm always checking out your stuff.
Well, I appreciate
Great
that.
work. Yeah, your show's great.
There are days where it's better than others, but yeah, I try my best.
So it's kind of like my back. There are days when it's better, but I try my best.
Yeah, they're right. It's like there are days where I can go out and play some basketball.
Well,
I'm laid on the bed. Yeah, that's just life, right? It just happens that way. No, man, I'm glad you could join me. Garland Nixon, radio show host, political analyst. He hosts the Garland Nixon show. He has shows all the time. I don't think you have a set schedule for those shows.
No.
So I'm just going to say all the time. So definitely check out his channel in order to see his content. He is fantastic. He is an awesome guest, and he is an awesome show. Garland, I wanted to hit with you. I had pulled up. I'm slightly discombobulated. One of my guests wasn't able to show up because of stuff that was going on. But, I know what it was. There are a few things. One of the things had to do with the ICE raids that have been taking place. Now, we hit this once before, but this is amazing to me that this is legal. Like, they are beating up kids in schools. They are threatening Americans, like with physical force, if not pointing guns. There are reports of them pointing guns into people's face, effectively saying stuff like, I'll kill you, liberal. Krista Ball recently pointed out that they were hiring for ICE, and you can imagine that they were flooded with all sorts of racists and fascists that wanted to be part of the government to go after immigrants because they were given this notion of license by the Trump administration, effectively do whatever the hell they wanted. And the reporting on this, it goes both ways, right? When you present ICE and say, hey, look at all the stuff that these guys are doing where they seem lawless, where you get a lot of people who are fascists like, hey, we like that. Let's get into that. Whew, where can I sign up? And many of these people are overweight. They don't have the IQ necessary to do the job. Even in an open book test, they're flunking it. But this is a disaster to me. And it is terrifying on some level, because it's almost like this is a military unto itself that doesn't seem to be under U.S. law in the way that the law operates under normal circumstances, at least by cops. Like, it doesn't even seem to be functional in the context of cops, right? It seems to be their own gray space that they exist and operate in. I don't quite get how this is legal.
Well, I'll say this. What we're seeing now is the deterioration of the illusion of our government abiding by the law. I could go back and I could say, you know what, when they lied us into this war or that war or whatever, I could go to any, clearly the 1991 with the whole, what was it? Babies being thrown out of incubators thing was illegal. The government went out and hired a PR firm to cook up a lie that they knew was a lie. They brought this person into Congress knowing that they would lie, paying for them to lie, and lied us into a war, right? So clearly they had no regard for the truth, and Congress never held them accountable, right? So here's my point. I can go way back and I can say the empire by necessity lies constantly and pays absolutely no attention to the law that we supposedly are held accountable for. What we're seeing as the empire deteriorates is that illusion, because they maintain the illusion that they're going by law and international law. We must go after this country. Why? Because they're violating international law, right? What we're seeing as the empire deteriorates is the evaporation of that illusion. Now they're just like, what the hell? Who cares about law anymore? Let's not even try to maintain the facade that we go by the law. Let's just do whatever the hell we want to do externally. Oh, wait a minute. There's some fishermen going by on the boats. Hey, you know what? We want to steal the oil in Venezuela. Let's just say they were drug dealers or something. We'll blow the boat up and kill them all. And we'll in international waters where we have no jurisdiction. And when people say that's a violation of the international law, we'll just go, we can do what we want. Nobody can stop us. Externally. And internally, you would only expect the same thing. The analogy that I've used is that you got a guy who goes to a bar and he gets in a fight over stupid stuff. Then on the way home, he's involved in an argument because he thinks some guy cut him off in a stop sign. He jumps in the car and he gets in a fight with that guy. Then he's walking up the street and he's, hey, you looking at me? He gets in a fight. This is a psychopathic guy, the type that gets in fights with everybody. He's always looking for a fight. What do you think he's going to go do when he gets home to his wife and kids? He's going to smack his wife and beat his kids because his nature is one of anger and violence. Whatever he does in the street, that's what the hell he's going to do home, right? Well, when you look at the empire, and you say, look what they're doing, just brazenly slaughtering and murdering innocent fishermen and people. They don't even know who they are. It only stands to reason that when they come home, they're going to kick the dog, smack the wife, and beat the hell out of the kids. This is what we're seeing, an empire that is out of control, that has no whatsoever concern about law. There is no accountability. Where are the Democrats? What the hell are they even doing? Are they saying, don't do this? This is illegal? In the same way that the Democrats should be going berserk. What are you doing? You're lying us into a war. You're doing what George W. Bush did in Iraq. Instead of weapons of mass destruction, now it's fentanyl and drug deal. We know it's a lie, and we know you want to steal the oil. Everybody knows that. But where are the Democrats? Well, maybe it's a good idea to go to Venezuela and steal the oil. We must stop Maduro. Right. So they're going along with the lies just like they did all along. And I think what we're seeing is it will get worse. as they are desperate now for control to regain, in the same way that they're desperate to regain control economically and hegemonically of the world. We got to steal oil. We got to do this. We got to make these people do what we're going to say, what we want all around the world. At home, they're losing control. They're desperate to regain control, so they could care less about the law anymore. That stuff's out the window. They'll do whatever the hell they please, and they could care less whether we like it or not.
That's disturbing. That's very disturbing. And it just the fitness thing, I found it. So it says right here, it turns out that a third of the new recruits that have been hired are reporting to the academy are so out of shape that they're washing out of the physical fitness tests. As the Atlantic's Nick Murdoch, who's doing some of the best current reporting on the unfolding debacle, reported, quote, more than a third have failed so far, 4 officials told me, impeding the agency's plan to hire, train, and deploy 10,000 deportation officers by January. To pass, recruits must be able to do 15 push-ups, 32 sit-ups, and run 1.5 miles in 14 minutes. And here's another one, lowering hiring standards for poorly checked. It says, for those who do pass the physical training, it's also not going well. As NBC News reports, nearly half of the new recruits who arrived over the past 3 months were later sent home because they couldn't pass the written exam. According to the data, the academic textbooks and notes on the legal course on the Immigration and Nationality Act, Fourth Amendment, which outlines the officer can conduct searches and seizures. And by the way, they're able to use their books on this. So a third of them are too fat to do the job. And then when they do pass or get beyond that point, the other half are too dumb to do the job. And that's even with an open book, meaning they're looking at the book and they still can't get it right. You're like, can I just search random people? Yes. Can I lock up Americans? Yeah. I mean, yeah, I see it on TV all the time. Yes. That's amazing. Like, meaning they are just bringing in a flood of people, and the deluge of people have gotten to such an extent that they're just, it's almost as if people have seen what has been taking place, like on social media and everything else. And you have some people who are repulsed by it. They're like, oh my God, those people are Nazis. Those are guys fascists. And you have other people say, whew, that's the job for me. Those are the people that sign up. That's scary.
Sounds like, let's see. Sounds like our last 2 presidents. Biden was physically decrepit and brain dead. Trump, I mean, he couldn't run a block and a half, and he's not the brightest, the sharpest knife in the drawer. So, I mean, if you think about it, it makes sense. They represent our political class today. A bunch of brain dead guys who are fat and soft and out of shape. I'm in like my early 60s, and I could pass all of those tests easily. But these guys are like 20, 30 years old, and they can't do it. You know,
used to run up and down stairs, and now you're impressed by that.
But you know what we're looking at. Of course, it all makes sense because you know what you get. You know, I come from law enforcement and recruiting, and what you get oftentimes in these types of things are people who have more than anything else low self-esteem, and they want to go, you know, make up for that by being able to push others around and dominate and feel powerful, because internally they really feel weak. So the kind of person that would want to do this is like the most dangerous kind of person that you could ever imagine. The person that would say, oh, wait a minute, I get to push people around, abuse people, beat them up, drag them away. Yes, I want to do that. The kind of person who wants to do that is the person who feels weak and they want to exhibit power. And I know from being in charge of recruiting and law enforcement, it's the worst possible person. I've seen those kind of people get hired, and it never ends well, right? But the bottom line is, doesn't that kind of represent like the U.S.? Did you see the what was it? The march in front of Trump when he had the military march, and the guys were just kind of wandering all over creation. You know, I saw like the Russians and the Chinese, and they look like synchronized swimmers. You know, they're like, and then I see the Americans, and they're like wandering around, kind of aimlessly stumbling into each other. Feet look like, you know, centipedes going in every different direction. What the hell is that? And that's kind of where we are right now. That's kind of the empire is a farce. It's a joke. You know, the whole thing as it falls apart. becomes a farce. Our economy, our economy. It's fat and out of shape, and it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Everything about the empire is stupid. The whole discussion that our political class has is stupid. We like guys like us, we don't have like PhDs in political science or something like that. You know, we do other things, right? And we can look at what they're doing and say, but that's pretty stupid. Why would we do that? But they can't from the inside. So yeah, these are the kind of people that they'd hire. And of course, as I also think this, and a lot of me, I don't know, put on my conspiracy theory hat. Like,
Go for it.
Duran hat, not exactly, but you get my picture. And that is, and I felt for a while, they are looking at what's going on and they're saying, look, this thing's coming apart. This thing's going to go bad. It's falling apart. And when it does, the people are going to be like in the streets, and we need a bunch of goons that'll be able to, you know, hopefully put down the protests and put down all of the things when people go berserk and they're like, hey, wait a minute, you know, my whole life savings is gone. My job's gone. Everything's gone. What the hell's going on? Our economy's crashed. It makes 2008 look like, you know, the roaring 20s. What's going on here? That they're starting to put together a goon squads. But goon squads to be able to deal. And maybe I'm just being a conspiracy theorist here, but I feel like they know this thing's going to go. We know this thing is going bad, and they're like, we better get some goon squads. That way, when people start going berserk, we can put them down. And we need some really stupid, angry, low self-esteem people to beat the crowds. So let's under the guise of immigration, we'll bring in these clowns.
So we need a bunch of dumb, fat, angry, low self-esteem clowns.
Pretty much Congress and Senate, you know. Yeah. I mean, Ted Cruz, think about it.
I don't think you're wrong. I thought, I mean, I thought the same thing, right? Like this idea that, because I don't think they're doing it for reasons, right? Mm-hmm. Like they have to have reasons for it. I don't think it's just like, yeah, I'm going to get out of bed in the morning and I'm going to get all these goons to do X and Y. It's not that. It's, we have a plan. We may not tell you that plan, but we have an idea of what we're doing and why we're doing it. Now, it may be ultimately dumb, or it could, let's say, fit within the context of whatever they're trying to accomplish. And that could be the military in the way that Trump is trying to get the public acclimated to having military on U.S. soil. It could be these goons that he's trying to spread all throughout the United States in these various cities and everything else, just snatching Americans, snatching random people in a lawless way. By the way, on this front, if a policeman is nearby and they snatch an American, can the policeman intervene?
Well, you know, not really for this reason.
What?
Because that really,
I tell you why. Violated.
I tell you why. Because a policeman doesn't know. Okay, some ICE guy grabs a person off the street, and the policeman says no. And if that said, hey, you shouldn't do that. And if the ICE person says to the policeman, hey, we have credible evidence that this person is a illegal immigrant, and we have credible evidence that they were involved in a bank robbery and a murder and a theft and arson and all other things and blah, blah, blah. How's the policeman going to know he's lying to him? Was the policeman going to investigate on the spot? So if it would be like this, if you're a city officer, right, and state police come in and they grab some guy, and you're in a city and state police, say Baltimore City and Maryland State Police comes in and they grab some guy, and Baltimore City says, why are you grabbing a citizen of my city? And state police says, oh, we got him. He's wanted in the, you know, murder of something, right? Would the Baltimore City policeman be able to say to the Maryland State Trooper, hey, you can't take him. You have to prove that to me? Not really. So it would put the policeman in a very difficult position that he'd have to be able to kind of prove on the spot that this ICE guy doesn't have a valid reason to be. Now, he could say, I don't know if you have a reason, but somebody would have to administratively look into it and say,
when they say, well, when you need a warrant? Or a warrant applies when you go into somebody's house or somebody's car or something like that.
And keep in mind, when it's immigration, ICE, and when it is, what's the other one? The Border Patrol guys, right? Customs Service. Yep. It's different as far as new warrants needed, right? They have different laws. Customs and ICE have different laws when it comes to warrants. So I don't know. For instance, Customs, if you are, let's say you're in a boat coming up the Chesapeake Bay, and that boat is capable of going into the high seas, right? Which means you can leave the country with that boat. You're in a 50-foot sailboat. You come up the Chesapeake Bay. Customs can come and they can board that boat and they can search that boat with no warrant whatsoever, saying, well, we think you may be coming in from another country. They can search you to see if you have plants or animals. You know how they check to see if you've got some invasive species. So their laws of search and the laws of certain rules of search and seizure when it comes to customs and ICE are different than normal. And in a way, they kind of have to be. So, but the point is they use that to their advantage when they shouldn't be using it. You know what I mean? When they know good and damn well that this sailboat doesn't have any plants or animals or something that they should be searching for customs, but they really want to search it for drugs or something else, they use their ability to search it for plants and animals under the guise. It's unfortunate. Just like asset forfeiture and seizure laws, which are terrible. They're supposedly be used to stop drug dealers or something. The government uses that to advantage to harass, you know, you when you're walking down the street with a pocket full of money or something and they want to grab your money. So it's unfortunate, but that's the way it works.
What about in a situation where, let's say an ICE agent comes up on an American and the person says, well, we think this guy's not an American. And as an American, for some reason I have papers. I don't know. I have something that can identify, like I have a house, I have a car, I have this, I have that. I've been here for, you know, here's my birth certificate. Maybe I carry my birth certificate with me. I'm showing all of this stuff. And I show it to the cop. It's like, look, I'm an American. Protect me. What does the cop do in that situation? I mean, at this point, I've shown clear proof, positive evidence that this guy is full of it. Can the cop now get involved and say, well, look, he's obviously an American. You can't take him. You're violating his Fourth Amendment rights or whatever the number of rights are.
It gets very difficult when it comes to various law enforcement agencies interacting with each other, because the officers at the lowest level do not really have the authority to make those decisions. If an officer on the street wanted to make a decision like that, because keep in mind, that's a political decision, and with political implications, an officer on the street would then have to contact his advisor, his supervisor, who would go up the chain to, you know, the chief of police, who the chief of police or superintendent of a police department is actually generally a political appointee. So they're a political figure. So while we could theoretically talk about the officer's legal authority to make those decisions, keep in mind something. A political officer, I mean, a police officer is in fact a representative of the government and a political figure. And the officer himself would not have the authority by his agency, wouldn't give him the authority to make that decision. They'd say, you got to run it up the chain. And the chain would say, walk away from that one. We ain't going to go to war with the federal government. And let me tell you why. Well, for instance, when I was with the, when we were, you know, we did police boats and all the Chesapeake Bay stuff and all of that, right? We got millions of dollars from Coast Guard every year. We got millions of dollars from U.S. Customs because we were on the bait and drug boats and stuff like that. Do you think a police department that gets millions of dollars with the federal government, it always comes back to money, is going to bump heads with the federal government? You know what the federal government's going to do? They're going to call and say, well, you know, it's nice and unfortunate you have some run-ins with the ICE agents, but it would be a sad day if those millions of dollars that you get from the federal government should suddenly dry up. Not saying that it's going to happen, but in theory it could. And the chief of police would say, no problem. Oh, no. We got no problems. Do what you see what I'm saying? It always comes back to politics and money.
Garland, that sucks.
Yeah.
Because what that means is, even if you could say that if there are two cops, one cop is doing something that the cop has no business doing. Another cop can step in and say, hey, stop, you're breaking the law, right? I'm going to protect the rights of this particular citizen. I've seen that take place. Rare, but I've seen it. But in this case, you're screwed. Even if you can prove without a shadow of a doubt that you're an American, and the argument that this agent is making is that this guy's a foreigner, you're still screwed. You're going in a panty wagon to wherever they're going to take you to, whatever black site they take you to.
Well, there's the issue of jurisdiction too, because if the officers, the federal officer, an ICE agent, is enforcing federal law, and the local officer doesn't have federal jurisdiction, so it would be difficult for the local officer to even say you can or can't do that because they don't have jurisdiction over those issues, and for them to interpret it and say you can or can't do it. So you have the issue of, in other words, it's just something that a local officer wouldn't have the ability to make that decision because he doesn't have jurisdiction over federal issues. And yeah, you know what I mean? He just wouldn't have the jurisdiction to make that decision. It would have to go up to the highest levels, and then there'd have to be. And now here's the other part. Most of the time, your federal, or very oftenly, the federal agencies, like in the state of Maryland, will have an MOU, a memo of understanding with the state when it comes to you know, how they operate in that particular state. So there's just so many political things. It's not as simple as that. There's memos of understanding between the jurisdiction and the feds as to what will happen if they have a problem, and they may have to go by that. Well, if there's a contradiction between the two agencies, it will be settled by the Attorney General's office as set forth in paragraph 5A, blah, blah, blah. You see what I mean? It's so these things get difficult, but they're not something that an officer on a street level would be in a position to make a decision. He'd have to call his chief and say, hey, chief, look, or sergeant, really, and say, hey, Sarge, look, I think they're grabbing guys that they shouldn't grab. And then the sergeant would have to say, all right, let me call the chief. And the chief would say, let me call the mayor, or let me call the governor. They're not in a position to make those kinds of decisions.
So there is no safety.
Yeah, no. Well, you know, people believe it. Again, let's not get under the illusion that you really have rights. The privileges. As far as the ruling elite are concerned, you have no rights. As far as the ruling, they don't recognize them as rights. They recognize them as privileges that they can revoke on any given Tuesday. Look what's happening with, do you remember what was the guy's name? He was a Chicago guy. Castilla or something. And under the Obama administration, they said, well, he's a terrorist. Therefore, he loses his constitutional rights. Well, there's nowhere in the Constitution that you can say an American loses their constitutional rights. I don't care what you call them. Well, if they can do that, then you never had them. They can't, if they can feel that they can take them on any given day, you didn't have them, you had privileges. And so we argue for rights that we never really had. They will revoke those privileges as soon as they feel like they're inconvenient, and up to and including our right to free speech. Because how can the government call Twitter and Facebook and say, you've got to suppress Jamal Thomas and Garland Nixon, which you know they've done, and then went and just by doing end around, well, you know, we can't shut Garland Nixon and Jamal Thomas's speech up, but we'll call Twitter and Facebook and have them act as an agent for the government to do it, which is clearly a violation of the First Amendment.
I'm glad you mentioned that. One of your favorite presidents, Barack Obama, came out and gave a speech. I want you to hear what he says. This is rather amazing. This is rather profound. And obviously it was going in this direction, but for a country with the First Amendment, this is rather profound. Listen to what Obama says.
Part of what we're going to have to do is to start experimenting with new forms of journalism and how do we use social media in ways that reaffirm facts, separate facts from opinion. We want diversity of opinion. We don't want diversity of facts. That, I think, is one of the big tasks of social media. By the way, it will require some government, I believe, some government regulatory constraints around some of these business models in a way that's consistent with the First Amendment, but that also says...
I want to point out, you can hear the liberals in the background clapping. They're like, yes, yes, more censorship. Yes, more censorship. Let's keep going.
Look, there is a difference between these platforms letting all voices be heard versus a business model that elevates the most hateful voices or the most polarizing voices or the most dangerous in the sense of inciting violence voices. And
See, that's the rub, though, right? That's not necessarily a business model. That is just people, for better or for worse, choose it. Look, I can tell you on my channel, right? You can have somebody, and I've seen this on other channels, where the loudest voices pull or try to pull the host in a particular direction. And because the host feels like they need to be pure on some level, or whatever purity means in the context of whatever the channel is. And you can see it happen. The same thing happens on social media. The same thing happens when you're seeing all of these voices, like on Twitter, on, I don't know about Instagram or the other ones, but on Twitter, you can definitely see it. Those, I don't know if that's a business model, or if those are people who are, let's say, angry about something, and they click like, and it bubbles up. Or you have a YouTube channel where somebody is flipping out, and they like, oh, I like the fact that guy's flipping out. It's entertaining to me. Like, in which case the thing goes up. Those are people choosing that. That's not necessarily a business model that chooses. I could be wrong on this, but or Obama may make the argument of, well, the business model allows people to like the videos that's doing that, and maybe you suppress those videos and raise up other videos. The problem I have with this is under the Obama administration, Obama, when they were talking about do you remember I think it was called the Afghanistan Files by the Washington Post? And in the Afghanistan Files, they were going through the Iraq War, Afghanistan War, the surge, and all that stuff. And they were doing this thing called lesson learned, and they were trying to figure out what happened. And they were talking behind the scenes to generals and people within the context of the military. They never thought the information would get out. So they're having almost like private conversations that were recorded and eventually was outed. When they got to Obama, they were talking about how Obama was cherry picking so much information and data, and that he had mixed that stuff around, that there was no way to use any of the information that Obama was putting out to get any semblance of reality of what was taking place on the ground during his quote unquote surge. They just made it up. And so when he's saying, yeah, we need to, be more specific with facts that I prefer, that Biden prefers, that Kamala Harris prefers, those type of facts, not reality. Meaning they're talking about something very different things. They're not talking about reality. They're talking about something that, let's say, fulfills the obligation of government. But they need to be careful with that, because Trump is in now, and he is doing the same thing with his quote unquote facts in order to back up the, tariffs are going to bring us $1 trillion. We're going to pay down the deficit with tariffs. We've gotten the inflation has gone down. Like these things are just blunt lies. They're drug cartels that are bringing drugs in, which is why we're murdering people. And every boat that we kill saves 200,000 Americans. Okay, anybody can play that game of quote unquote facts. Give me your take on that. I find it disturbing, frankly.
Facts such as Susan Rice, one of his assistants, saying that the Libyan government was giving their troops Viagra so they could rape women. Those kind of facts. Here's the bottom line. It was nothing but a pack of lies. There was not an element of truth. There was not an element of honesty in anything that Barack Obama said. These are the people that lie us into war over and over. The foundation of his argument here was that the ruling elite, that the political class value truth and honesty and accuracy. And he's having a discussion of how they can get truth and honesty and accuracy and goodness. We don't want hateful speech. No, they don't want hateful speech. Such as somebody saying I'm opposed to genocide. We can't have that kind of hateful speech. We got to stop people from doing things like that. Such as somebody writing an article a year ago that says, hey, perhaps the Palestinians aren't getting the best treatment they could get. Oh, we got to throw that person out of the country. That's hateful speech. So the truth is, it's nothing but a pack of lies. The idea that Obama and the people that he represents are concerned with accuracy and facts. Where are they right now with these lies about drug boats and lies about Donald Trump? We'll read in the same article, Donald Trump is going after drug dealers and drug traffickers. And then a couple paragraphs down, it'll say, but really, he really wants to oust Maduro and do a coup. So they'll like lie in the beginning of the article. I've seen articles, and then further down and basically say, well, you know, it's all a pack of lies. Really, we just want to steal the oil, but we're okay with that. So the truth is that everything he says is lies. And it's simply what he's really saying is this. We want to control the conversation and the narrative because people are on to us. It's not working anymore. They're hip to us. They don't believe us anymore. They know we're lying. And we got people pointing at it saying, yeah, there's something fishy about it. What the hell is some guy taking guns apart, changing clothes 4 times? That doesn't make sense. I don't know what it is, but your story doesn't make sense anymore. They're sick and tired of that. They want to be able to suppress it. And in order to suppress it, they got to give us the same pack of lies that they got to feed us in order to go invade a country and steal the oil. And Obama is just a spokesman for liars and the ruling elite and those who wish to control us. It's the same conversation we're having about a bunch of goons coming on the street grabbing Americans. So we'll get accustomed to it. So when they come grab us, we'll be like, well, at least I guess they're trying to protect us, right? It's the same crackdown physically on people who are pushing back against the government, crackdown rhetorically about people who are saying things they don't want. We got to shut it down online. He wants what they're doing in the UK, where if someone says, hey, I'm opposed to the genocide, and they do a tweet, we can arrest them and lock them up.
Yep. Trump in Russia. Obama was the guy that got rid of, what is the name of the law? It was the one that disallowed propaganda to be used on American soil. Obama got rid of it.
Smith-Munson Act or something like that.
That's it. Yes. Like, that's what I mean, right? It's like, this is the same guy who's now saying, yeah, we have to be concerned about facts and opinion, and you know, there should be facts and opinion, and the government needs to get involved in making sure that facts are facts. Okay, so you want a ministry of truth, which is effectively what Joe Biden tried to do. That's amazing. Like, there is a reason why we have a First Amendment in this country. And for all of its failures or for all of its weaknesses, there is something to be said about the ability for people to be able to point out that the government is full of shit. And, you know, whether that's under Obama, that people didn't necessarily want to do, especially Black people at the time, or whether that's under Trump, who people find it easier to do, or under Joe Biden, where, again, liberals didn't necessarily want to put out that the president was out of his mind. Like, I find that to be disturbing. It's one thing if you trust your government, right? Like, if you had a government that was credible, honest, trustworthy, then you wouldn't need this law. And the fact of the matter is, or this government intrusion, this intervention, the reason that Alex Jones exists is because the government has fundamentally lost credibility. And the same thing with mainstream media. That's not something that Alex Jones did. That's something that media and the government did, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And who decides if it's a fact? You know what I mean? We've heard this term facts used in the most abstract way over the last, I don't know how many, you know, all through Ukraine or whatever. They're spreading propaganda. If you remember this, they even came up with, they had misinformation, malinformation. And we're like, what the hell's we remember we covered this as Sputnik. What the hell is malinformation? It's things that are true, but they mislead people. We're like, well, if they're true, how the hell do they mislead people? Either they're true or they're false. So we've even come to the point where who decides what the hell are facts? They got to take things that are true. They said had to be shut down because we were spreading Russian misinformation, and we're not Russian. And we haven't stopped saying the same damn things we said when we were on the air. And so it was Russian misinformation, even though it wasn't coming from Russians. It wasn't even about Russia. It was about America, etc. And they've decided what are facts. So we've got to separate from facts and opinions. You mean your Wall Street owners and at Citibank that named your cabinet, Barack Obama? That's the we you're talking about? I'll put it like this. It would be like me saying, you know, I'm going to really got to do there's a list of things we have to do to stop banks from being robbed. Oh, really, Garland? What have you been doing your whole life, robbing banks? Well, I really don't think that you're coming up with these ideas. What are you going to do? Well, first of all, we've got to get rid of security in banks. Yeah. They don't need security. Next, we got to leave the doors unlocked and a map in every bank that points you right to the vault where all the money is. Well, that'll stop banks from things. I'm a bank robber. He's a liar. He's a thief. He's a murderer and a criminal. And I'm supposed to believe that he's trying to stop lies and thievery and murders and criminality. What a joke.
Yeah. I mean, and let's be honest, right? Obama was the one with the kill list, right? He was the one that was killing Americans. Or, you know, and now Trump is doing it. And people are like, oh my God, I can't believe Donald Trump is doing it. Dude, Obama had a literal kill list. And then they made the argument that, well, what is it? Due process doesn't necessarily require the judicial branch. It can take place in the executive branch. Eric Holder made that argument. I nearly fell out my chair when he said that. I was like, whoa, really? I wasn't even heavily into politics, and I nearly fell out my chair. Really? Does that work that way? Yeah, that's an amazing thing. So this is now what? This is going to be the Democratic platform. Liberals love this, by the way. You heard them applaud. They were like, our facts need to be the things that are, enshrined into whatever governmental apparatus that you guys are trying to come up with. That is disturbing to me. They have missed the boat big time. They have jumped the shark. What they don't get is that their issue, if you were honest with the public, you wouldn't have had this issue. Meaning, if the public, like when you tell the public that weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, when you tell the public Trump is working with the Russians, when you tell the public this is an unprovoked war of aggression in Ukraine, when you tell the public 9/11 was, or let's say you don't have a real investigation. I don't know if you've seen the Tucker Carlson thing on 9/11.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
I
it
knew a
is
lot of that stuff
mind-blowing.
already. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable,
Mind-blowing.
isn't it?
When you see that and you think to yourself, okay, so these people are just liars. And we're supposed to trust these liars to come up with an apparatus to give the public truthful data. No, nobody's going to accept that.
But it makes sense, though. It makes sense. Let me just say this. That's why they have to play this game. And that's what they do all over the world. Yes, we're coming to bring peace to this country when they're really coming to overthrow. We're bringing democracy to this country when they're really not doing the opposite. Like countries that literally, as an example, Maduro was elected in an open and honest election. And the government, the U.S. government says, oh, he stole it.
Yep.
But all of the evidence says he didn't, and the people there say he didn't, and everybody who's been there that's looked at their electoral process says their electoral process is certainly clean, and all the numbers say, "Oh, he stole it. That's okay. They still got lots of oil, so he stole it." Yep. So they don't care about that. It's just such a clown show we're looking at, and they have to do this because when you lie that much, you got to stop people from pointing out you're lying if you have the power to do it, and that's all it is.
Right there. It's right there. Your government is coming apart at the seams, and you need to find a way to keep it together because people realize, okay, these people are liars, in which case people go into their own bubbles of reality. And so I get why he's saying, he's like, hey, people are in their own bubbles of reality. It's hard to have a government that's cohesive when everybody's attuned to different items of what's true and what's false. Yeah, that's true. That's fair enough, right? But you guys did that. It was Bill Clinton that got rid of the Telecommunications Act that had to have equal time for the various people on the media and everything else. Like these were things that the government itself did. And we have an individualistic country that we pride ourselves on being individualists. Okay, well, some of these things are consequences of it. Last thing, when are you guys cutting my government back on? When are the lights coming back on to the government? At some point, I'm going to need to fly back into the States, and I would prefer to have competent air traffic controllers, not just people, with a call sign saying, hey, call back later. Nobody's here. When is this taking place? Because it doesn't seem like there's any movement, any motion. It doesn't seem like anybody cares that the government is cut off. It just is off. There's no leverage. There's no momentum. There's no nothing. I see no energy behind the government being brought back to existence.
Yeah, who knows? But to me, this is another perfect example of the incompetency and the just the breakdown of politics in the U.S. You're telling, well, the Russians, you got to do this. You're telling the Chinese, you got to do this. Iranians, you got to do this. You're telling everybody how they got to run their government, right? It's like me saying, Jamal, you're not running your home and your kids and your family and this and that and all, going around the neighborhood pointing out to everybody, you're not cutting your grass enough. You're not doing this. And my lights are turned off, my water's turned off, my grass is 3 feet high, and everybody looks at my house and says, your house is a shambles. Your whole family hates you. They're all, your wife just left with the kids and they're living in a shelter somewhere,
the cool man,
that's fired, your whole life is a disaster. And you're going around telling everybody in the community how to run their lives. And that's where we are. If you think about it, let's simplify it. Our government can't even keep the lights on.
Can't even
Our
keep
government can't even pay the most basic bills, and the most basic job they have is to keep the lights on in their own home, and they can't even do that. And there is no, I can't look in the future and say when they'll be able to do it. They're so corrupt. Meanwhile, you're giving $40 billion away to this lunatic Malay just because he's willing to hand over his country to Wall Street.
Yep.
But 40 billion to him. People can't eat here. Homeless people wander in the streets like zombies. You can't keep the lights on, but you're handing money to everybody all around the world, but yet you can't even pay your most basic bills at home. The dysfunction in this government, I don't know if they'll ever come back, if they'll ever get them back in, because it's so dysfunctional. They can't do the most basic things. It makes sense if you're looking at this clown show on Capitol Hill. I mean, when I look at the Republicans, I don't know what the hell they're wandering around talking about. I look at Hakeem Jeffries. Have you ever looked at the looks on his face lately? It's like this. They're like, what do you think about Israel, this or that? And he just kind of goes. He don't know what to say. He has no answer. Like, geez, Israel, I better not say anything about that. What about the midterms? Oh, we're totally screwed. I don't know. You look at the looks on these, they're like just like slobbering. They look like Joe Biden. When you would like see these pictures with Joe Biden and everybody's dancing around him, and then Joe Biden's like this.
Yeah, just out of it.
He is the perfect example of the Democratic Party, period. They're just standing there drooling, standing off with no idea what to do, stumbling into the midterms. And no idea that the bottom line is this. Why would they push back on the Republicans? They don't disagree with them on anything of substance. Maybe like some issues of trans bathrooms or something like that they may be upset about. But the issues of substance, they don't really give a crap. They're just trying to survive and maybe get their paychecks another 6 months.
Yeah, it's like we'll go to the mat for trans kids that have surgeries at 14 years old. Yeah, it's wild to me. It's like Trump doesn't care. He is oblivious. He's going to Busan, Seoul to talk.
Build the ballroom, man. Build the ballroom.
He's building a ballroom, for God's sake.
Now the Democrats are mad about that. They're opposed to that. He's building a ballroom and he's going to name it the Trump room. How dare he? Now they'll get upset about that. Now if he invades Venezuela, but don't build a ballroom. That'll really piss the Democrats off.
By the way, invading Venezuela with a military that's not being paid because the government is not on.
And you only could put together about 15,000 troops to invade a country the size of France and Germany combined.
Yeah, it's just outrageous. Garland, man, you have my appreciation. I always enjoy talking to you. I always enjoy when you come on the show. And I have Garland Nixon. He is a radio host, political analyst. He has his own YouTube channel, The Garland Nixon Show. Definitely check him out. He does shows all the time, and he has fantastic guests. Garland, when is your next show, by the way? Just so the audience will know to look for.
I don't know because I'm kind of busy. I try to at least get one show a day right now because I'm getting my visa stuff together to go to Russia, and that's a pain in the neck. And I got to. Yes, I'm supposed to go on the 6th through the 16th, but it's a pain in the neck getting the visa, so I'm trying to do that. And then,
is it an event? Or
some journalism event where I get to do interviews and stuff. It's supposed to be
congratulations,
whatever Larry
man.
Johnson is doing there right now. I'm supposed to do the same kind of thing. So I'm looking forward to that. And of course, I sold like my house and my property, and I got to be out by December 17th. So I'm getting moving. So I'm just a little bit busy these days. I'll just say that a little bit, but I'm still managing to get in at least try kind of a show a day.
Well, congratulations on the Russia thing.
Unless the aliens get us from 3-Eye Atlas.
I don't know what that is. So I know they be calling it that. Look, the 3-Eye Atlas thing, no BS, is very weird. From my point of view, I know Avi Loeb has been on the show. He's been making the argument. He's been very pissed off because people have been like, "Why is Avi Loeb calling this thing a UFO?" People took issue because Avi Loeb had insinuated that this could be like an alien weapon. And it's like, dude, where are you getting this from, right? It is very weird for something to come outside of our galaxy and to have this kind of steep curve where it's going past the inner planets and then ducking behind the sun on his way out. So it's almost like if you had to build something to spy on Earth and to spy on the inner planets around the solar system, this would be perfect for it.
Yeah. Well, I think it flies by and they go, yeah, let's take a look at Earth. Ooh, yeah, no, that's probably not a good idea. Just leave. Holy crap.
Yeah.
Let's get out. I don't know about you. One alien's like, I don't know about you. I say we get the hell out of here as quickly as possible. Good idea.
Well, that's the rub, though, right? Like, even if you had, let's say, a group of benevolent aliens, whatever that means, benevolence, right? Just because a group may be neutral doesn't necessarily mean that neutrality is in your interest or outside of your interest. But let's say benevolent. Let's say Star Trek-esque in the way that the Federation operates. How would they ever work with Earth? Like, how could you really ever engage this planet in a way where you're not going to be seen as being duplicitous? You're seen as being, that you're scheming, you're distrusted. Like, there's no way for us to trust and for us to engage something like that in a way that would be to our benefit in a direct sense. So
I think they're already here in one sense, and they're wandering around doing all kinds of stuff. I mean, look, they're already all over the place. Every time you turn around, somebody's seeing them fly by, underwater, going fast. They're all over the place.
Oh, I believe that
we know there's aliens everywhere around here. I believe that.
I am a firm believer, right?
Yeah.
Believer in this sense. It's just, there are abductee reports that are interesting. There are the crop circle stuff. Some of them are interesting. Some, it depends on which crop circles, right? There are questions of where they come from. I had Lou Elizondo. I interviewed Lou Elizondo when Elizondo came out. And I remember asking him, like, these tiny crafts that we're seeing, obviously, they're not coming from another planet with a craft that small. Where is this coming from? Now, Lou, in many cases, didn't want to answer some of these questions because Lou was like, look, I'm under federal, I could be arrested and they could put me in a cage. Some of the stuff I just can't answer that you're asking me, right? And he was like, yeah, that's a good question. But what it implies is infrastructure, that there's infrastructure already here. It's not like somebody's in a tiny craft and they're flying from, I don't know, some random place to get to Earth. They're most likely here. They're most likely bases that are already localized in various parts around the planet. And so when you're seeing like small crafts and stuff like that, and those things are coming out of the ocean, that is kind of a heads up like, hey, we're already here, buddy. And not just already here, there's infrastructure that's already built on this planet that would allow them to persist here. They may not necessarily be coming from some random place at every moment that somebody sees a craft. Now, I think it's far more in depth than that. And the government knows more than what they're implying. But are they going to tell us? And would you believe them if they did?
Yeah, of course, just like the old Romulans cloaking device. If their technology is so much far ahead of ours as it appears, they would likely have the ability to, and I'll use this word, to cloak their infrastructure, to block it so that whatever our sonar, I would suspect maybe some of it's underwater, who knows where it is, but to block it so that we are unable to, to see it with any of the equipment that they have. So it could be very close. It could be all around us and we don't, it could be cloaked from our ability to see it. It could be interdimensional where they store it in another dimension, in and out of the dimensions. You know what I mean? So who knows? Yeah. But I think I'm with you. I think they're already here.
By the way, that's the other rub. We don't know, like it could be a quirk of physics that allows them to do what they do. Like meaning manipulation of gravity, for example. Like, for example, when David Fravor and Dietrich were the pilots that were on the Nimitz video, where the thing came out the water and shot up, radar hit it, called in the airplanes. The airplanes came in. Fravor was flying on 9/11, so Fravor is like beyond impeachable in regards to his credibility. They see it, they zero in on it, and Fravor is watching this thing for like 5 minutes. And he decides, I'm going to turn in on the craft because he didn't know what it was. He was like, I have no idea what that thing is. And as he turns it on it, within a split second, the thing shoots off. Just within like a blink of an eye, it's just gone. And Fravor is sitting there like, what the F just happened? Like he's just mind blown at this point, right? The radar picks it up in the area where Fravor was supposed to go, let's say at the end of the mission or in the case of an emergency. So it ends up going to a location that's supposed to be this kind of secret location where he is supposed to be. And again, all of this stuff is blowing Fravor's mind. Fravor comes out, Dietrich comes out, both of them sit there and talk about what they saw, what they experienced. You have radar data, you have all of the stuff associated with it. You have people who were on the boat who saw this thing came out of the water. And so if you're looking for any case that is like, I only need one, that would be the case. That would be the case. Like there's so much data associated with this particular case, and you have so many people who that were either in the air, on the boat. You have people who work with Bob Bigelow. Bigelow was one of the people who worked with ATIP. That was the program that was under. Okay, this is getting too much information. I'm sorry. I'm geeking out.
Yeah, no, I love that stuff. We need to do a show then. We need to do a show where we talk UFOs and stuff like that, or UAVs or whatever they're called. I love that stuff, man. I'm convinced. To me, it's the data set is overwhelming. I mean, it's not even to me a discussion anymore for someone to say that these things don't exist. We could argue about where they come from and all that, but it's obvious these are non-human occurrences.
Yeah,
and they appear to be monitoring us, monitoring nuclear sites. They know what the hell we're doing. I think they're listening to pretty much what we're doing, kind of like an ant farm.
If you listen,
they're looking at it like an ant farm.
I don't know if you've seen, if you've ever read David Jacobs. Jacobs goes into this idea of hybridization. Oh, that stuff gets terrifying. Jacobs is terrifying. His books are getting more terrifying as he gets older. It's like the threat. It's like the threat. Yeah, it's fascinating. Garland, man, I love it when you come on. I love these conversations. I swear to God, I do. Thank you for this. You be safe, okay?
All right, thank you. Talk to you soon.
Have a good one. Bye-bye. All right. Garland Nixon, the man, the legend. He has my deepest congratulations for being able to go to Russia for that. That is awesome. That is just awesome. I saw Larry Johnson when he was there. Larry Johnson was like, yeah, these are not crumbling businesses here. Effectively pointing out that all of the propaganda that's been pushed out about how businesses are crumbling and the government is collapsing in their oil lands and all of this other stuff is nonsense. Complete, utter, entire BS. So I'm glad that Garland has the opportunity to make that trip. Shout out to him. Shout out to him. I always say, Garland, man, he has my appreciation forever, for the rest of my life. Garland was the one that got me into radio. I know I say it every time because it is something that he has my deepest appreciation for. It was my into the business. It was the boss that gave me the job. Yes, Garland gave me the opportunity. I think Lee, at the time, Lee got sick. So Garland was on fault lines with Lee Stranahan. And Lee, let's say Lee got sick. I'll say it that way. And Garland needed a co-host. And so they brought me on to be the co-host for the week. And at the end of that, Garland was like, hey, I think the boss man wants to offer you a job. I was like, really? I was like, yeah. At that time, I had, I think I had just jumped back into the country. I had been away for, my wife and I at the time had been away for months. And I was like, well, look, I don't have anywhere to be because, we're just getting back into the States. And so we're staying at home with my mom. I said, so if you need us to move to DC, we can do that. We moved up to Maryland and I was in Maryland, DC for the last 5 years. So shout out to Garland. He's fantastic. Yes, I could talk his ear off about the UFO stuff. In fact, I was the UFO correspondent for the network. That was me. That is how much I was actually into it. And I have UFO stories in my, I think in the first iteration, before this became this iteration of the show, but I don't think I've delved too much into it on this one. What is this? Plato's Beard. Plato's Beard. I love that. Thanks, Jamal and Garland. See my comment immediately below this, as YouTube seems to be censoring super chats. Really? Plato's Beard. Well, Garland's video on consciousness and quantum physics might give some clues about how they do this. Garland did a video on quantum physics and consciousness. Did he? Shout out to Garland. Okay, badass. Shout out to Garland. Shout out to Garland. I will tell you, I am always dodgy when people bring in quantum physics for stuff. I mean, Roger Penrose has this hypothesis that the consciousness is a quantum process, like tubules in the brain that decoherence and all this other stuff. I don't know. There are other people who make the argument that consciousness is not in the head, it's outside, meaning you're a consciousness that projects a body, not the other way around. It's hard to know. It's like a hard problem. Like reality is always difficult to figure out just because it's like you're soaking in something. Just because you're soaking in it don't necessarily mean you understand it. So I don't know. But shout out to Garland, man. In fact, shout out to all my guests. Shout out to Jerry Gray. He is a great guest and he stayed longer. So shout out to him for that. Shout out to Esteban Carrillo. I have gotten to the point where I can roll my R's. It has taken me a while to do that, but I have learned, and I've learned for you, Esteban Carrillo. Arriba. I don't do it well, but damn it, I can do it. And of course, Garland Nixon. So Phil Schneider. That's the one who shot himself, right? I think that's the one who shot himself. Don't giggle and eyeball the people checking your paperwork, etc. What's this? Some parts of neurons do exhibit quantum behavior, but electricity is using a subatomic particle, even if it's the biggest one, the electron. Well, yeah, electrons are subatomic particles. They can show particle wave duality, just like anything else. All right. You are allowed to go to Latin countries now, Jamal. Yes, I am. Well, I've been to, right. right. I've been to Ecuador. I have been to Ecuador. I've been to Mexico. In fact, I was in Mexico for, I think it was the elections, if I'm not mistaken. The company sent me to Mexico for the elections. I've been to Panama. Panama was wild. Oh, Panama was wild. So I went to Panama by myself. I was working as a software engineer and just looking for cheap tickets. It ended up being a very cheap ticket. And so I did like a 3-day turnaround for the Panama trip. And, it's like you're at the gas station and people are doing salsa at the gas station. It's like, whoa, is this real? Like they were just doing their thing, right? And I remember I was at the hotel. I went down to the hotel bar and I was just kind of sitting there. I didn't want to be in my room. So I was just kind of hanging out. And there was a party of some sort. Music comes on. And all of these people get up and start just doing salsa. Everybody doing salsa. And I'm sitting there like, wow, this is amazing. Like this is some shit you see in movies. Like it's one thing to know that people do salsa. It's another thing to see that is being the dance that people do. Like let's say if you're in the States and you're at a club, if you're at a white club, you see all sorts of shit. Like you just see all sorts of wild shit take place. If you're at a black club, a bit more rhythm. But, again, you're seeing people dance in a particular way that's somewhat rhythmic, but it's not structured. It's not structured. Salsa is structured. And to see people know how to do structured dance just on a whim, and everybody's doing it. And it's not like, you've gone to a dance club, you've just at a bar. It's just wild. Just very wild. Just fascinating. But yes, I can roll my R's now. Arriba. So yes. British Empire. Uh-oh. Yeah, I'm not going to stay here for the history of the British Empire. All right. I'm going to call this a day. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say share. I'm going to say subscribe. I'm going to tell you to be kind to the degree that you can be kind. I want to thank all of you for joining me on this show, on this episode. Have you visited Brazil? Yes, I have. So when Lula was elected, the company sent me to Brazil to cover the Lula election. Look, the reason the company sent me all the time, because I on a whim, I used to like to go. They knew I liked to travel. And I was pretty good at covering political events. With the exception of one. I said, fuck on air once. But to be fair, I had been traveling for hours. It was like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And they needed me to do a spot. And I fucked up. But beyond that point, I had a pretty flawless record of doing reporting. I was really good at it. And so they would send me, because on the whim, I was willing to go. It's like, hey, can you leave on Friday for this trip? Where do you need me to go? Yes. I don't care. Do you need to know where? Nope. Just give me a ticket. I'm on my way. So any random event that they needed me to cover, I would go to cover. I didn't care where it was. I went to the Putin-Biden summit in Geneva. That was eye-opening. That was eye-opening. That was damn eye-opening. There was Lula's election in Brazil. Again, that was eye-opening also. It's pretty wild when people are telling you that they need a military dictatorship. And they're telling you that openly. It's like, yeah, Brazil needs a heavy hand. We need a dictatorship. We need our dictatorship back. What? Are you out your fucking mind? Let me see, what else I did? I did the California thing, the summit in California. Did the European elections. I covered those in Vienna. It was because my ex-girlfriend was in Vienna. She spoke German, so it was easy to get her help to speak to the people who were coming to the polling locations. Not to mention it was nice to see her. Yeah, they used to send me all over the place. I used to enjoy it. I deeply and immensely enjoyed it. And like I said, I was good at the reporting part. So it was just kind of a win-win. When I went to those places, I went to work. But yeah, Brazil was good. Brazil was a really good trip. The food in Brazil is so good. It's so good. Yeah, it was close. Yeah, that election was close. That election was damn close. Like, I was sitting in the radio station, because Sputnik has a radio station in Brazil. And I was sitting in a radio station, and everybody has to vote in Brazil. It's like compulsory. So you get the overwhelming majority of the population voting. And I'm sitting there like, all right, how long is this going to take? And he's like, yeah, we should be done by 9 o'clock. So within a few hours, the election was going to be done. Like, everybody was going to have their votes and everything else. And as you were there, the police were working with Bolsonaro. And so they were impeding traffic. They were preventing people from getting from point A to point B. They were doing everything in their power to stop, let's say, various contingencies of the population from getting to the voting locations. And there was a weird dynamic in the population. When Lula won that election, when Lula left with like an 80% approval rating. He was a rock star. And so this election, I think it was like, okay, well, Lula's going to do well in this election. And what you ended up getting was a lot of people saying he's a criminal, he's a crook, he's a jailbird, he got out of jail and all this other stuff. And it's like, okay, but you realize Operation Car Wash was nonsense, right? Like, the U.S. government was working with the Brazilian government in order to put him in a cage so Bolsonaro could win, because Bolsonaro was going to lose. That didn't matter. That didn't seem to apply. And so you got this split where half of the people you talked to was for Bolsonaro. The other half was for Lula. And in many cases, depended upon where you were. It was very weird. Like, the population was like literally bifurcated. And at the point where the election came up, it was that way in the election. I think it was like 49 or 48.7 to 51 or something. Like, it was extremely close. And I was just sitting there watching the tally as it was coming in, like, holy shit, this is close. Bolsonaro could win this thing. Lula pulled it out at 9:05 or something like that. The election was called. The election was over with. Yeah, it was wild. The judge, what is his name? Judge Morales. He was not taking any shit. He had an iron fist in regards to ensuring the integrity of the election. I know Glenn Greenwald and all of these other people, they mistaken British politics. Well, he lives in Brazil, so take the shit with a grain of salt. But some of the shit that they allow here, they would never allow in Brazil. And, this notion of election denial and everything else, Bolsonaro was being prosecuted for that. You had a lot of people at the time who thought, okay, what is going to happen? Is there going to be political violence? A little bit, not a huge amount. There was massive protests. The protests, in fact, the company was like, look, we want you to stay because we have no idea what's going to take place. You had all these people who ended up hanging out at a military base, literally blocking traffic, blocking food, medicine, etc., and trying to get the military to violently overthrow the government of Brazil. because they didn't necessarily like the election outcome. Yeah, it was wild. It was very wild. Very wild. So, yep, it was bizarre, but God, man, it was a hell of an experience. I remember having a conversation with this guy who spoke English, kind of spoke English. And he says, Lula's a crook. Lula's a crook. And I said, he says, Brazil needs a strong hand. And because, we have difficulties here and etc. I said, okay, fair enough. I get that. He says, well, I lived in the US for a while. Did you? Okay, fair enough. And I said, but if all of these people are crooks, he says, yes. I said, didn't Lula actually give back when he was in office? Like, meaning he had 80% approval rating. Why did he have 80% approval rating? Well, because he was, social programs and stuff like that. So, assuming for the moment that you're right, everybody is a crook. This crook actually gave back to the public, right? So yeah, he did. So if all of them are crooks, what crook would you prefer? The crook that doesn't give anything back or the crook that does? You make a good point. No shit, I make a good point. I mean, it was just a wild conversation. Like, for somebody to say we need a dictatorship. That's just a wild conversation. Yeah, I like Lula. Colombian elections. Well, I would have to go to Colombia to cover those elections. And I haven't. I've never been to Colombia. I've never been. Hey, if I had a sponsor, I mean, granted, it kind of depends on where I'm in the world, but if I had a sponsor. Shannon Baum had something like, Shannon Baum had a massive approval rating. She was a rock star. Shiznix, I'm high. It might even be both of them. Lucky you, Shiznix. Lucky you. Can't get drugs that I'm aware of here in Nepal. I would have to go to Amsterdam, Spain, somewhere like that. Those are illegal here. No, he's not perfect. None of them are perfect. Yeah, none of them are perfect. All right. I know I said I'm going to close it, so I'm going to close this. I am going to say, like, not even Jesus would waste his time with willfully ignorant ears. Never know, man. Never know. No, those elections were fascinating. The Putin thing was a wake-up call. Like, and yes, I will end this, but just last thing. When several of those events were wake-up calls. The Putin-Biden summit, when I make the point in saying working for Sputnik was the high point of my life in regards to career, I mean it. And I guess I can't say high point because I love doing this job, but what's the word I used to use for it? There's a specific phrase I used to use for it. But working at the helm of fault lines was a magnificent opportunity and a magnificent position that I appreciate deeply. Because some of those things you can't experience without doing it. And I remember my boss at the time, he went with me to the Geneva one. And he met up with family, his brother. And they was like, yeah, we're going to go and do men things. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to the spa and get rubbed down by a has-been supermodel in Italy. You guys can go out into the forest and do whatever the fuck you want to do. I'll see you guys when you get back. But eventually we got to Geneva. And when we finally got to Geneva, we were sitting in the room, in the radio room, there's like a press room. And Putin and Biden finally come up. And we're watching both. Biden gives a statement. Now, Biden, of course, has to choose the people that he's getting a statement from. And Biden starts off strong, Putin, he's a son of a bitch and blah, blah, blah. But then eventually Biden lands on this rhetorical motif that sounds very much like Putin is sounding. Like both of these guys are sounding very similar. And I'm sitting there like, holy shit, these guys sound so much alike right now. Like they're saying the same thing. It's almost like they came off on the same hymn notes. And my boss is like, you okay? I was like, dude, This is positive. This is a positive development. These guys are sounding very similar, like they're saying very similar things. They seem to be on the same page. Okay. It's like, okay, you're a cynical asshole. Fair enough. Putin comes out, answers any question that they throw at him. The press attacks Joe Biden. They attack Joe Biden. And they are screaming at Joe Biden, effectively saying stuff like, did you give Putin the business? Did you tell him this? Did you tell him that? And Joe Biden flips out at one of the agents or one of the media people saying, you don't understand, and et cetera. What he was trying to get across is, dude, we have no relationship with him right now. And we are in an escalatory spiral that is very dangerous to the world. So we need to have some level of communication, even if it's back channel. So, you can go fuck yourself. Joe Biden got very angry at the reporter. He later apologized. I don't know why he apologized, but he later apologized. Fast forward to several months later, my boss was completely right. Completely right. He nailed it. He was like, effectively, this is bullshit. None of this shit is going to matter. All of this is political posturing. None of it is going to matter in the least. He was completely right. He nailed it. He completely nailed it. Completely nailed it. All right. You all have a fantastic day. You be safe. You be kind to the degree that you can be kind. Trump never apologized for everything. No, he does not. No, he does not. That is not a strength, by the way. That is not a strength. I know they think it is politically. In America, they think it is, but it's not a strength. Can become a proxy for Russia. Oh, Jesus Christ. They're going to get crushed. You all, be safe, be kind. I'll see you in the morning. Have a good one, everyone.